There's a blood-curdling scream rattling inside the ice cream truck, blood on the metal. The child is terrified, and his terror only increases when the hatch opens and a long, fleshy appendage reaches out. For a child, there's nothing quite like the thrill of summer vacation. The long, sun-soaked days of doing cannonballs into the pool, running through sprinklers, riding bikes until the sun sets and the fireflies fill the air with twinkling lights. Coming home with hair stringy from swimming pool chlorine, faces smeared with sunscreen, hands sticky from too many popsicles. Their parents call it a mess. They call it freedom. And if the freedom of summer vacation had one sound, a theme song perhaps, it would be the music of the ice cream truck. That cheerful melody, the siren song summoning every kid with a pocket full of change and a taste for frozen treats. All over the country, children pool their allowance money and spoil their appetites for dinner whenever that special truck rolls into the neighborhood. And this neighborhood is no exception. All of the kids cried and mourned the previous summer when the ice cream truck driver who had served the area for 30 years tragically hung up his hat and retired. They worried that there would be no ice cream truck at all this summer. But wishes do come true, and the first evening of the summer, a music box rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel serenades the neighborhood, signaling the return of the beloved truck. As they gather around, fistfuls of cash in hand, the crowd of kids can't help but notice that this truck is a bit different. There are no colorful pictures of the truck's various offerings emblazoned on the side, no prices either. Most notably, there's no driver, at least not one that they can see. But when the first brave child, a little girl, steps up to the side of the van and asks for a chocolate-dipped cone, a slot opens, and out comes her order. She pays the same price she paid for her ice cream the previous summer, and that's the entirety of the transaction. With the seal broken and the van proven to be a genuine ice cream truck, the other kids line up to place orders of their own. As they do, one small group of boys stands off to the side, speaking in hushed whispers. There's something funny about this new ice cream truck, something they don't quite trust. Why isn't there a driver? Why does it look so unusual? One boy suggests that the truck is haunted, driven by the ghost of a former ice cream man. Another argues that it must be some kind of robot, a self-driving truck with an automated ice cream dispensing system. The third boy insists that there is a driver. He's just hiding, for some reason. There's only one way to know for sure. They'll have to wait until everyone else is gone and try to get a look inside. While the rest of the neighborhood's children are ordering and enjoying their ice cream, the three boys run home to collect supplies for their special investigation. They reconvene in one boy's garage, across the street from where the ice cream truck is, still idling and serving its line of customers. One boy found a firecracker swiped from his older brother. The other grabbed a disposable camera for capturing proof of whatever they discover. The third has procured the most important tool of the mission, a crowbar taken from the toolbox in his father's shed. Now, with all of their equipment assembled, the three boys are ready to uncover the secret of the ice cream truck. They watch from a distance until the only remaining customer has walked away from the truck. The engine revs, and just before the truck can pull away, the boy with the camera runs up to the side. He'll serve as the distraction. He holds up several dollar bills and asks for a deluxe hot fudge sundae. While whatever is inside of the truck is preparing the ice cream, the other two boys sneak around to the side of the van. They take the crowbar and place it in the crack between the doors. They apply as much pressure as possible, but it won't budge. But they're not about to give up now. They take a deep breath, summoning all of their strength, and try again. With a soft pop, the door comes open. The two boys glance at each other, eyes wide with excitement. They did it. Now, time to go inside. Quietly, carefully, they sneak into the shadowy back of the van. Meanwhile, on the other side of the truck, the boy with the camera receives his order and places the cash into the delivery slot. As he waits for his change, he suddenly hears a strange sound, a deep, rumbling growl emanating from within the van. The van begins to shake, and the boy can hear two voices screaming in terror. He recognizes the voices immediately as those of his friends. They must be in trouble. He runs around to the other side, just in time to see the horrified face of one of his friends. The boy reaches out for him, trying to escape from whatever is inside of the ice cream truck. But just as their hands almost touch, an unseen force yanks the boy back inside. The door slams closed, and the screams go silent. Where there were previously 3 boys, now there is just one, standing alone, holding an ice cream sundae. The engine rumbles, and the truck drives away, leaving the remaining boy in its dust. His friends are both gone without a trace. But wait, what's that? On the ground, where the truck just was, is a small slip of receipt paper. The boy picks it up and reads the message scrawled on it in messy handwriting. It says, "Please come again, but make sure to follow the rules." On the back, there's a crude drawing of 2 young boys, eyes wide, mouths open in an endless scream. What was meant as an innocent expression of childish curiosity has ended in disaster after these boys unknowingly provoked SCP-1386. SCP-1386 is a white ice cream truck that appears to belong to the Good Humor brand. The truck's physical condition is poor, and unlike other trucks of its kind, it does not feature any images or descriptions of the products that it sells. The van drives itself without a person behind the wheel, and none of its doors or windows open via conventional means. This detail has led the Foundation to conclude that the van is sapient. Like most ice cream trucks, the van plays music, alternating between Pop Goes the Weasel and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. These songs will play 24 hours a day and alternate every 4 hours. On a few occasions, it has been observed playing a version of Green Sleeves, but as soon as a customer is detected, it will switch to one of the other 2 songs. SCP-1386 has a thin slot in the middle of its driver's side door, which can only be seen when it dispenses an ice cream product after making a sale. After the ice cream has been dispensed, a small slip of receipt paper will slide out with the price written in very sloppy but legible handwriting. Payment is given to the van through the same slot it uses to deliver ice cream. Once it has been paid, the van will simply drive away. The prices and flavors of the ice cream products offered by the van change daily. The van appears to never run out of stock on a given day, no matter how many orders it receives. In order to explore the nature of SCP-1386's products and, let's face it, to indulge in an all-too-rare sweet treat, the SCP Foundation conducted a series of tests. After thoroughly reviewing the official test log, I have assembled some of the most notable entries. On March 30th, 2012, 2 Foundation doctors, referred to in the file by the initials R and D respectively, placed their orders with the ice cream truck. They each requested 1 cookies and cream smoothie, and they received their orders without incident. The receipt was for $4.89, and the bill was swiftly paid. The smoothies were described as pretty good, though one doctor insisted he had had better. On April 1st, 2012, Dr. D placed an order for 1 Neapolitan ice cream sandwich. A few seconds later, the van dispensed an item. However, it did not resemble any ice cream sandwich that he had ever seen. It appeared, instead, to be a meat and cheese sandwich with a slice of tomato. Curious, D took a bite and found that the sandwich was in fact made out of chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream. It was a sandwich made from Neapolitan ice cream. Shortly after Dr. D tasted the sandwich, the van spat out a receipt. There was no price listed, only a simple message: April Fools. As Dr. D read the message, the van sped away, leaving him bemused, novelty ice cream in hand. The next notable test occurred on April 17, 2012. Dr. F ordered a single peach push pop and promptly received it, along with the receipt that demanded $16.27 for the treat. Dr. F scoffed at what he deemed an absurd price for only 1 push pop, and rather than pay the full cost, he inserted $3.75 worth of quarters into the van. Then he attempted to walk away. Well, the van was having none of it. A slot opened in the door of SCP-1386, approximately 6 feet in height. Then, a large rusted steel trap emerged, grabbing hold of Dr. F and dragging him inside. The slot slammed shut, and the usual ice cream delivery slot began to spew a sludgy pink substance for 5 minutes before driving away. A sample of the substance was taken for analysis, and it was found to be made up of blood, skin tissue, and bone fragments, all of which were a DNA match for Dr. F. After this incident, only D-Class personnel were permitted to interact with SCP-1386. On April 27, 2012, a D-Class ordered a cherry popsicle from the van, adding one request: with nuts. The van waited several seconds, then produced one cherry popsicle, unwrapped, studded with crushed peanuts. The receipt read, $2.20, your nuts. The D-Class chuckled to himself, then paid the van before it sped away without further incident. On April 30th, 2012, the D-Class chosen for testing was a bit more adventurous with his order. He requested a Caesar salad flavor popsicle. After a few moments, the van filled the unusual order, dispensing a popsicle that was off-green in color and was reported to taste like lightly dressed lettuce with a hint of croutons. The cost was $4.56, and there were no complications. On May 4th, 2012, the selected D-Class ordered a dark chocolate fudge pop. The receipt produced read $1.38. The transaction would not be notable if it weren't for the fact that the test subject chose to pay with 2 single-dollar bills. This would make it the first transaction under Foundation observation that required change. After the 2 bills were inserted, SCP-1386 made a sound like a cash register, then produced a small, wrapped package. On the front of the package was a hand-drawn image of various American coins. Once the D-Class had the package in his hands, the van drove away. At Dr. J's instruction, the test subject opened the package. Inside, he found 62 cents in American currency. The coins were analyzed and found to be completely ordinary and completely safe. The D-Class asked if he could keep his change. The request was denied. As the experiments progressed, the test subjects became increasingly creative with their menu choices. On May 10, 2012, the D-Class test subject asked the van for an ice cream Kinder Egg, unsure of exactly what that would be. The treat cost $3.87, and the van promptly dispensed an item that looked very much like an ordinary Kinder Egg, but was made from a coffee ice cream coating and a French vanilla ice cream interior. There was no toy inside, but there was, however, a handwritten note reading, "I owe you one toy." On May 16, 2012, the D-Class requested the following items in order: 1 cherry ice lolly, 1 cherry ice pop, 1 cherry popsicle, and 1 cherry-flavored drink, frozen. After receiving the order, the van began to emit a distressing sound. The test subject described it as a real unnerving sound, like someone skinning a cat in reverse. The sound continued for several seconds before the slot opened and several unwrapped red sticks of ice shot out at a high velocity, landing on the pavement and shattering there. A few moments later, a large styrofoam cup was dispensed containing an unidentified frozen green liquid. The test subject asked the van, "What do I owe you?" But the van gave no response. Instead, it drove away. Pieces of the red ice shards were taken in for analysis and were found to consist of 2 parts water, 1 part red food dye, and 1 part arsenic. The contents of the cup could not be identified, but the substance was observed to have a melting point so high that it could not be thawed by any available means. The cup and the strange green substance therein have been held for further examination. Personally, I find it unlikely that any of its secrets will be uncovered. It is uncertain what might have driven the van to act up in this manner, but it is my theory that the combination of 3 different synonyms for popsicle in the same order caused the van to become confused, then distressed, and then angry. As for the unmeltable substance in the cup, well, I certainly wouldn't drink it. For the next experiment, the research team decided to test a new procedure when it came to placing ice cream orders. The selected D-Class was a mute, but able to write. Rather than speaking their desired purchase aloud, they ordered a vanilla cone in chocolate via a message written using a pencil and paper. Then, they raised the paper toward the van, holding it in the spot where the dispensing slot normally appeared. After 1 full minute had passed, a slot opened, 3 inches lower than the usual one. Next, something emerged from the slot, a thin, flesh-colored appendage which grabbed the paper and slid back into the van and out of sight, closing the slot behind it. A few moments later, the usual slot opened and the ice cream was dispensed. The receipt followed, asking for 97 cents in exchange for the treat. The price was paid without further incident, and the D-Class test subject was interviewed. They responded in sign language, their hands trembling in fear as they recounted the experience. The transcription of their statement is as follows. It was a hand, not human, 2 fingers and a thumb. It was bony like a dead body, and it smelled. It smelled dead. They refused to eat the ice cream they had ordered, explaining that they had lost their appetite. Naturally, this development piqued the research team's curiosity, and they were eager to explore the nature of this hand further. On May 30th, 2012, personnel D5 was selected for testing and ordered to repeat the same steps when placing their order. It should be noted that D5 was not mute. I attribute any changes in the experimental result to this factor, but that's just my opinion. D5 wrote down his ice cream of choice and handed it to the van. Again, the lower slot opened and the flesh-colored appendage emerged. The ice cream cost 86 cents and the bill was paid without any trouble. As he ate his ice cream, D5 was questioned about the appendage he had seen. He was far more nonchalant about it than his predecessor had been, stating, "I don't see what they were getting all worked up about. It's just a hand, you know? There's probably just some guy in there handing out ice cream. Sure, it's weird, but what here isn't?" On June 4th, 2012, the same experiment was repeated again. Personnel D2, who was also not mute, wrote down his request for a banana sundae with hot fudge and handed it to the van. Again, the second slot opened and the fleshy hand emerged to take the order. D2 had nothing notable to say about the transaction, with one exception. He insisted that there had to be a person inside the van, explaining, "There's got to be somebody in there. I could swear I heard somebody cough like they had a cold or something." The researcher conducting the interview brought up the subject of the hand, and D2 shrugged. "Look," he said, "it's just not that big of a deal, just a hand. Got all 5 fingers, looked healthy, certainly not dead or whatever. B's just lost it. Never trusted that guy much anyway." B, in this case, referred to the mute D-class from the previous test. There is one more date in the test log, but rather than an experiment, it catalogs a development that I find deeply troubling. On June 6, 2012, personnel D7, the aforementioned mute test subject, was found dead in their holding block at 7:40. The time of death was determined to be approximately 4:30. They did not share a cell with anyone else, and there were no signs of forced entry. However, the cause of death was strangulation, complete with light bruising on the neck. This is speculation, but I am willing to bet you the cost of a deluxe banana split that, if examined closely, those bruises would match a hand with only 2 fingers and a thumb. SCP-1386 is kept in an evacuated 4-block neighborhood surrounded by a 10-meter-high reinforced concrete containment wall. This area is located 8 kilometers from the nearest inhabited neighborhood. In the aftermath of some unfortunate incidents, the containment procedures were updated to include constant surveillance. Additionally, the area may only be approached by D-class personnel. Any individual that does approach SCP-1386 within a 3-meter radius must put on the appearance of happiness. For example, smiling or laughing regardless of one's current emotional state has proven to be effective. If the subject is approached by someone that does not appear to be happy, it will growl, refusing to engage positively until the individual appears friendly. If a member of Foundation personnel is going to make contact with SCP-1386, they are strongly advised to have at least $20 USD on hand, and where the entity can see it. If SCP-1386 is approached by someone that does not have a currency available, a siren will begin to emit from its undercarriage for the next 24 hours, at a frequency that causes bleeding of the inner ear. So far, all attempts to silence this siren have been unsuccessful. Once the siren has started, SCP-1386 will refuse to move until the 24-hour period is up. Any attempts to interact with SCP-1386 while the siren is active will increase the intensity and volume of the sound. As with any anomaly that I research, I find myself inclined to speculate a bit on the nature of SCP-1386. A self-driving ice cream van that only wants to hand out frozen treats to anyone willing to pay for them sounds more like the subject of a children's book than a standard SCP Foundation anomaly. But of course, as we've seen, it is not quite as cheerful as it first appears. Whatever consciousness is inside of SCP-1386, it does not appreciate being mocked or toyed with. It has no tolerance for anyone behaving in a manner that it does not approve of, and will punish that behavior accordingly. and God forbid you order an ice cream and then refuse to eat it. Though it could be that the refusal to eat the ice cream is not what doomed that unfortunate D-Class. Perhaps it was that they simply saw too much, knew too much. Maybe getting a proper look at that arm is what sentenced them to death alone in their cell. Perhaps it's best that the identity of the thing inside the van remain a secret. After all, if we learned too much, I can almost guarantee that we would all scream for ice cream. The sun rises over the battlefield. The American flag flaps gently in the wind. The world is silent. Bang! The door slams open, and the boy runs out of the house, making plane noises with his mouth. The toy bomber in his hand arcs and soars, dipping and diving, as it makes its imaginary bombing run around the backyard. Over the sandbox, swooping low through the thick grass, past the pond, under the swing set, and up and away into the sky, climbing higher and higher in the direction of the treehouse, with its American flag flapping in the morning breeze. What a perfect day. The boy breathes in the air deeply and looks around. His shoulders slump. He's bored already. 2 seconds in the yard and he's already bored. What is there to do out here that he hasn't already done? He's played in the sand, he's swung on the swings, he's climbed up to the treehouse. He hears the car engine kicking into life somewhere out front. His dad's voice carries over to him on the breeze. "I'm running late for work, I'll see you later. If you find my bag anywhere, don't go looking inside of it, just tell me where it is when I get home. Love you, bye." The wheels crunch through the gravel driveway, and the engine sound slowly fades into the distance, leaving the boy alone in the backyard again, with nothing but the wind for company. Great. Now he's got to find something to do for the whole day. He throws the toy bomber to the ground in frustration. A wing snaps off and bounces away into the flower bed. Uh-oh. He'll need to fix that before Dad gets home. Super glue. That'll do the trick. There must be some inside. His dad is always fixing things. But the boy's mission is almost immediately sidetracked. As soon as he steps into the house, he spots his dad's bag right by the back door, where he always forgets to look. The boy looks at it curiously for a moment. He wonders what's in there that his dad told him not to look at. He'll just have a little peek. Not a proper look. He won't even open the bag all the way. Just a little look inside. If anyone asks, he'll say he was looking for superglue. Wait, what's that? It can't be. A little pot with a red lid and big cartoonish letters on the side. Play-Doh? What's his dad doing with a pot of Play-Doh in his bag? He thought his dad had a really grown-up job. That's what his mom always says. His dad has a very secret grown-up job, very important, very secret. Is that really what he does at work all day, play with Play-Doh? The boy is far too grown up for Play-Doh. He hasn't played with it for years because it's for babies. No way is he going to play with it now. Nope, he's a big boy who plays with real toys. But still, a little look won't hurt. He'll take it out, squeeze it in his hands a bit, remember how babyish it is, and put it back. He definitely isn't going to play with it. The boy pops the red lid off and peers inside. Yep, just as he thought. Boring. Just a lump of red putty, sitting there being all boring. But as the boy tips the pot out into his hand, it feels a bit weird. It moves a little in his palm. Is there an insect inside it or something? It feels like a pair of little legs. He rolls the lump over into his other hand and peers at it. Yes, a pair of legs sticking out from the red ball. Only they're not insect legs at all. They're tiny, about the size of insect legs, but there are only 2 of them. They're totally red, matching the color of the Play-Doh, and seem to have a tiny pair of boots on the ends of them. The legs wiggle around helplessly, sticking up into the air, until all of a sudden, a hand appears sticking up out of the clay. It looks like a tiny person has somehow been buried in the Play-Doh upside down. The hand gets a good grip on the red ball and pushes and pulls at it, steadily freeing the rest of its body until suddenly, a fully formed tiny man pops out of the surface. Roughly the size of the boy's fingernail, the little red man stands up straight and takes in his surroundings. Not only is the tiny person wearing boots, he's also got a backpack and a helmet on his miniature head, all made of Play-Doh. In fact, this tiny person looks just like one of those little green army man toys that his dad had when he was little. The little soldier looks up and sees the boy staring down at him, jumping back in fright. The boy laughs. He guesses he must look pretty scary to someone so small. He smiles at the little army man. The little army man very slowly lowers himself down to his knees, reaching down to the Play-Doh floor he's standing on. His little red hand seems to be feeling around for something in the putty. In fascination, the boy stares closely as the Play-Doh under the soldier's hand morphs into the shape of... what is that? A gun. The soldier lifts the tiny red rifle to his shoulder and points it straight at the boy's eye. He fires, and to the boy's surprise, something comes out. A stream of teeny tiny Play-Doh bullets pepper his eyeball. The boy throws the Play-Doh ball as hard as he can and blinks hard. A tiny scream goes with it. The bullets didn't really hurt that much, but his eye is a little watery now. The tiny soldier has a real working tiny assault rifle. He's starting to understand why his dad is still playing with Play-Doh. Where did that Play-Doh go? He must have thrown it into the backyard. The boy runs outside and looks around. There it is, just next to the sandbox. He creeps up to the ball cautiously, trying to see if the little soldier is still there. Wait, hang on. There he is. No, there he is. Is that another one? He kneels and peers at the small crowd gathering around the ball. He can't quite believe what he's seeing. Dozens of little men are milling around the red ball, with more marching out of it in formation every few seconds. Little red Play-Doh tents are being erected in a perimeter around the ball. A couple of tiny soldiers chop down a twig with tiny red axes and start a campfire. A mini red jeep weaves its way through the grass, and a general hops out, with a cowering officer by his side. The tiny general barks tiny orders. It's difficult to hear what the man is saying, but it sounds like he's speaking English, only really high-pitched. He points to a group of soldiers who immediately rush over to the ball of Play-Doh and pull a ladder out of it. They rest the ladder against the edge of the sandbox, and a couple of them hurry their way to the top. Climbing up onto the wooden board, the pair of them split up, rifles in hand, checking the area is clear. The general is the next up the ladder. He surveys the yard with a battle-worn wariness, eyes coming to rest on the treehouse. He pulls out his binoculars and takes a good hard look at it, studying every inch of the tree before spotting the flagpole rising from the top. Lowering the binoculars with evident satisfaction, the general points a tiny hand at the enormous tree and cries out an order at the top of his little voice. A high pitch rises from the troops on the ground. They pump fists and slap backs. The army has grown already. As the boy looks back down at the platoon gathering in the grass, he sees a dozen more tents have sprung up. A group of soldiers stand in formation around the ball of Play-Doh, keeping watch in every direction. And there, a soldier sits on an acorn crying. Helmet in his hands, he weeps openly. There is a red cross on the tent next to him. That must be the medical tent. The boy crouches down on all fours and peers inside the tent. There, on the tiny red bed, surrounded by tiny red nurses, lies a soldier. His legs are bent out of shape, and he's crying out in pain. A doctor approaches and gives him the bad news before readying the saw. The boy sits back up. He can't watch. A high-pitched cry echoes from the tent, loud enough to dampen the commotion around the rest of the camp. The boy recognizes that scream. It's the same scream he heard when he threw the Play-Doh out of the door. That first brave soldier, defending his brothers in arms from the giant. What had the boy done? The soldier outside the medical tent picks up the phone and informs the tiny soldier's tiny family what had happened. He had lost both his legs, but not his life. He was a hero. The battalion is mobilizing. No time to mourn. Snipers climb the ladder onto the edge of the sandbox and set up nests all along the wooden beam as trucks rumble through the thick grass below. On the other side of the sandbox wall, a desert platoon makes its way through the scorching heat. Soldiers sit atop tanks, shaking the last remaining drops of doughy water from their red bottles and wiping sweat from their brows. All of them heading in the direction of the treehouse. The boy stands up, surrounded by tiny soldiers. He has to be careful where he steps now as they fill the grass around him. A couple of tanks rumble between his feet, flattening the blades of grass as if they were as weak as, well, blades of grass. All of the soldiers, all of the equipment and vehicles, everything is coming from the little ball of red Play-Doh. And little is the right word for it. With every new unit deployed to the front line, the ball shrinks slightly. It's getting smaller and smaller by the minute. They're going to need reinforcements. The boy rushes into the house and returns in just a few seconds, arms laden with Play-Doh. He's got every pot of it from when he was little. He pops them all open, one after the other, and throws them onto the ground in the midst of the camp. The only slight issue is that all the Play-Doh is that gross brown color that it goes when you mix all the colors together. That won't matter, will it? Gunfire breaks out almost immediately below him. The boy jumps back in surprise, stepping on a communications mast by accident. Tiny brown soldiers rush out of the Play-Doh balls all around the camp, diving into cover and opening fire on the red soldiers. It's a massacre. Red soldiers taking a rest from the front line, calling their loved ones, getting ready to go home on leave, lying injured in beds. All of them are gunned down. Most don't even have a chance to grab their rifles. One brave red soldier sprints to the communications mast and tries to radio the rest of the battalion, telling them what's happened, but the mast is destroyed. A stray bullet catches him in the side of his head. and he crumbles to the ground, just a lifeless blob of Play-Doh. The boy watches in horror as a couple of brown soldiers pick up the body and toss it into the nearest ball of brown Play-Doh. A dedicated team of them mix the body in with the rest of the dough until it's that same brown color. From the blob emerges a new brown soldier. The small red streak running across his heart is the only sign that he'd ever been a red at all. The soldier quickly disappears amongst the mass of helmets and boots, trampling any trace of the Red Army. The whole yard erupts in tiny warfare. The red snipers lining the walls of the sandbox are picked off one after the other. The desert platoon are ambushed by landmines and quickly surrounded, hiding in broken-down tanks as plumes of sand are thrown up all around them. Before long, the brown troops have them completely surrounded. One last soldier bursts out from the hatch in his tank, holding grenades in each hand. The bullet catches him in the head before he can even finish his war cry. The grenades explode harmlessly, nowhere near the brown troops. The red convoy, on its way to the tree, stands the best chance of survival. The boy follows them with fascination, watching as the brown army fight their way through the red line from the back, splitting it through the middle as their superior firepower makes short work of the transport and supply trucks. Some red soldiers dive away into the thick grass, climbing up dandelions and weeds in a desperate attempt to escape. Few succeed, as the bodies fall back into the mud like raindrops. A tiny screaming noise fills the yard. The boy turns around just in time to jump out of the way of the brown fighter jets. 5 of them streak through the air, almost at his head height. Missiles fire out of the bottom of each jet, one after the other, blowing apart what little remains of the red convoy. The gunfire dies down within the hour. Skirmishes break out across the yard as brown patrols pick off the stragglers they find from the Red Army hiding in ants' nests, under fallen leaves, and huddling around broken-down vehicles. The boy watches as several high-ranking officers gather in the brown base to oversee the absorption of the last of the red ball of Play-Doh. They mold themselves a big meeting table with a brown map of the yard and plot out their strategy for taking the treehouse for themselves, moving around even tinier little model units across the surface of it with sticks. The plan quickly comes together before the boy's eyes and under his feet. A series of mortars and surface-to-air missiles are deployed along the wall of the sandbox. The Air Force takes over the original brown base, chopping down blades of grass and laying out Play-Doh runways flanked with brown hangars. A ring of military units surround the base of the treehouse, strategizing about how best to ascend the colossal structure and reach the flagpole. In the pond, an aircraft carrier splashes into the water, marking the arrival of the Navy. The ship is soon flanked by a pair of destroyers armed with anti-aircraft missiles. The boy is about to go over and peer into the water to try and spot a nuclear submarine when he comes across a sight for sore eyes. Red soldiers, not much more than a single squadron, hunkered down around the base of the swing set. They've covered themselves in dirt and little clumps of moss to camouflage. They must be the forwardmost scout squadron, just far enough away from that original convoy to escape the slaughter. But what are they doing? The units are all gathered around a pile of leaves. There's something underneath. What is it? It looks like plastic. Of course, it's his toy bomber with the broken wing. Trying not to draw the attention of the brown army, the boy drops to the ground next to the red units, doing his best to hide in the grass. The red soldiers are arguing amongst themselves. The general is there. He's survived, but barely, slumped against a blade of grass. The scouts' high-pitched arguing is a little too quiet for the boy to make out, but it's pretty clear what's going on. They need to get the toy plane working, but it'll be hopeless without the other wing. He lifts his head and looks around the yard. There it is, in the flower bed, but it's surrounded by brown troops. How could the red soldiers possibly fight their way to it and get back unharmed? Oh, wait. The boy just gets up, walks over to the flower bed, and picks up the wing. In about 3 seconds, he completes an insurmountable effort for those little soldiers. Kneeling next to them, he offers the missing wing. The scouts all stand back warily. It's the general who climbs to his feet and walks over to the boy. He looks at the plastic wing, looks up at the giant towering over him, and raises his arm in a salute. The others follow suit quickly and get to work repairing the toy plane. Brown soldiers notice the commotion and start to close in on them. They don't have much time. The boy stamps out a runway for the soldiers in the grass. The plane is almost ready to go, but is missing one vital piece of the propeller. Only there's a bigger problem. They're out of red Play-Doh. A brown soldier breaks through the thick grass and rushes towards the squadron, his assault rifle peppering the side of the plane with doughy bullets. The scouts all dive into the vehicle and kick the engine into gear. Little red gears and pistons whir into life beneath the plastic, but the plane just isn't moving without the propeller. What can they do? The brown soldier stops in his tracks, staring at the plane. The boy peers at him closer. There's a red streak across his heart. Conflict contorts the tiny soldier's face. The door to the plane opens, and out steps the general. The two soldiers face each other on the runway, the Red Scouts desperately calling the general to get back in. None of them move. The brown soldier raises his rifle and shoots the general in the head. The older man crumples to the ground. Inside the plane, the scouts start to panic. They don't have their guns with them. The brown army is bearing down on them from all sides. What can they do? The brown soldier with the streak across his heart walks slowly over to the general's body, stoops down, and picks him up. He carries the body around to the front of the plane and, without a word, starts using the Play-Doh to build them a propeller. Brown soldiers burst through the grass, swarming the runway. They need to leave, now or never. The brown soldier places the propeller onto the plane and steps aside as the vehicle roars off along the runway. He salutes the ascending plane as one of his brown compatriots puts a bullet in his chest, right through his red heart. But the plane is already away, lifting off into the sky. The toy bomber dodges and weaves its way between the whizzing bullets. It banks hard, pulling the nose around inch by inch to face the treehouse. The pilot guns it, pulling the tiny stick back sharply. It seems to take an age for the bomber to climb. The boy glances behind him just in time to see the Brown Navy launch their missiles, 6 of them, all making a beeline for the bomber. Or so it seems. At the last moment, he sticks a hand out and slaps the missiles out of the air. A couple of them explode, leaving streaks of brown Play-Doh on his hand. The others spiral to the ground, where tiny soldiers dive for cover. The Brown Air Force scrambles, but it's too late. As the jets shoot across the yard, the bomber has already reached its destination. The scouts jump out, deploying red Play-Doh parachutes as they circle their way down onto the flagpole. A jet catches up to the bomber and blows it out of the sky. The scouts don't have time to mourn their lost pilot, or any of their dead for that matter. Quick as they can, they cut the American flag free. As it flutters and floats down to the grass, the squadron unfurls its replacement, a red rectangle of Play-Doh, barely a couple of inches across. One of them pulls a bugle from his pack and plays the highest pitch version of the last post you could ever hear. The whole battlefield falls silent to listen. The boy places a hand over his heart just as the first drop of rain hits his shoulder. From somewhere inside, his mom's voice calls, "It's about to start raining. Come inside before you catch a cold. I'm making cocoa." The boy grins and runs into the house. Outside, the rain pours, and all trace of the war washes away into red and brown streaks in the dirt. And with that, you'd be forgiven for thinking that SCP-705 had never even been in that young boy's backyard. Most adults would just dismiss the boy's afternoon entertainment as a figment of a child's imagination, but most adults have not encountered SCP-705, otherwise known as militarized Play-Doh. The results of a redacted megacorporation's research into creating a self-molding product. The specific mechanics of how this militarized Play-Doh was created are hazy, to say the least. What is known is that the small red blob of what appears to be the popular children's sculpting toy exhibits aggressive militaristic tendencies. As soon as the 5-ounce pot is opened, SCP-705 activates, forming itself into miniature Play-Doh soldiers. Each unit comes dressed in detailed and accurate military fatigues, carrying miniaturized weaponry and equipment, all of which function identically to their real-life counterparts, aside from one small detail. Everything is made entirely from Play-Doh. When active, SCP-705 can divide into hundreds of infantrymen, each of which seems to have some level of personal autonomy. As of yet, no hive mind mentality has been observed between the soldiers. They all communicate as their real-life military equivalents would, through barking orders, strategizing, and working together. Upon activation, each instance of SCP-705 is highly territorial, seeking to take immediate control of the nearest location or object that seems to be of strategic importance. This could be anything from a coffee machine to a treehouse. What appear to be innocuous household objects to us pose an incredible tactical advantage to the tiny soldiers, many of whom are willing to sacrifice their lives to take control. The longer this militarized Play-Doh is allowed to roam free, the more advanced the military unit becomes. Leadership figures emerge, battle plans grow more and more advanced, and technology improves. While the Play-Doh may initially take the form of a handful of infantry units, if left to their own devices, these units will soon be riding on the backs of tanks, firing miniguns through the doors of attack helicopters, or even developing rudimentary navies and air forces. And of course, you have seen what happens when SCP-705 comes into contact with a regular pot of Play-Doh. The otherwise harmless putty will take on the same characteristics as this militarized Play-Doh. If the two groups of soldiers are the same color, they will form an alliance. If they are different colors, well, that's where the fun begins.
Containing SCP-705 is relatively straightforward. Simply gathering all of the Play-Doh together and putting it back into its 5-ounce pot with the lid closed will neutralize the tiny army entirely. This, coupled with how harmless the tiny, doughy bullets are, means that SCP-705 requires little security. It is housed in Sector 2 safe SCP containment with the lid closed. The only accidental outbreak that has occurred since its containment has been in the break room, when a researcher accidentally left the lid open while they went to the bathroom. When the researcher returned, all they needed to do to rescue their coffee from the clutches of a crazed Play-Doh general was brush a few soldiers off the counter. This is a day SCP-705 still talks about often, with deep fear and reverence.
Honestly, no. It doesn't feel like anything is working, the woman tells the man who is seated across the room from her. She's been coming to see him for several months now, but she doesn't feel like she's made progress on any of her issues. The man listens and nods as he jots down some notes on his pad of paper. He has something he wants to discuss with her. She may feel as though she's run out of options, but there is one other thing they could try. He's seen lots of success using this with his other patients, though it's a technique that many would deem to be rather unconventional. The woman is unsure. Unconventional techniques don't exactly instill her with confidence. But at this point, what did she have to lose? The man stands up and motions for the woman to follow him. He leads her out of his office to a section of his practice that she's never seen before, where they stop in front of a closed door. On the door is a window covered by a curtain, and she notices that there are a set of strong locks as well. He unlocks the door and ushers her inside, where she finds that it is a small room, maybe 10 feet across at most, with thick padding on the floor and walls, and bright white lights set into the ceiling. He tells her to wait there just a moment and to make herself comfortable before he excuses himself. The woman looks around at the padded room, wondering just what it is that she's agreed to. The man returns, and now he's holding something. A garment bag. He unzips it to reveal a dark piece of clothing inside, but when he takes it out, she sees now that it isn't clothing at all, at least not any normal kind. It's a straitjacket. The woman is scared, unsure if she wants to go through with this, and he does his best to put her at ease. If she's uncomfortable, she certainly doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to, but he reiterates that he has had great results using this with some of his other patients. It's been something of a miracle cure. Well, no, cure is the wrong word. He corrects himself and explains that this won't cure her in the way that she's probably thinking, but rather what he's found is that this therapy is able to provide a momentary relief from symptoms, a chance to see what life is like without being plagued by the issues that have led her to seek his help. Once she has gotten a glimpse at what life is like without these burdens, they can work towards bringing her back to that point through other therapies and techniques. This might be just the breakthrough she needs to finally make something work. The woman is still skeptical, but she is desperate to find anything that will help her escape the thoughts constantly plaguing her mind so that she can get back to being the person she wants to be. And after a moment of thought, she agrees to go through with the procedure. The therapist tells the woman to hold her arms out in front of her and places the straitjacket on her. She can see and feel now that it is made of black leather, and it fits her perfectly, almost as if it were made just for her. She turns around, and he pulls the straps tight before fastening them in place. The woman, standing in the small padded room and fully constrained by the black leather straitjacket, turns to the man and asks, "Now what?" "Now we wait," he tells her, before backing out of the room. "A warning, though." "Now a warning?" she says. "This is a one-off procedure. You can only do it once," he tells her before closing the door. She's confused. Is this the procedure? He's locking her in a cell? What is going on? She never should have agreed to this. Her mind starts to race, filling with bad thoughts, and they get even worse when the lights suddenly go out. She starts to panic, breathing heavily in the dark from both fear and from being constricted by the leather straitjacket. She calls out that she has changed her mind. She doesn't want to do this after all. No response. She's serious. She wants to end this right now and leave the room. It isn't working. It's actually making her feel worse. All the fears and anxieties that plague nearly every moment of her life come rushing in at once. Her mind races as she can feel all the telltale signs of a panic attack starting, a million little issues pulling her apart at the seams, leaving her stretched out and helpless to do anything to stop it. But then suddenly, there's a change. Like a cool breeze blowing across her face, the feelings of hopelessness and despair start to dissipate. Her anxieties feel as though they were melting away into the dark, leaving her with only the comforting embrace of the straitjacket. It isn't that she feels happy necessarily. She simply feels normal, content with herself and her situation. It's an incredible feeling, and she basks in the joy of not feeling bad. She doesn't know how long she's in the dark room feeling content. Minutes, maybe hours. But eventually the door opens and the lights come on. Her session is over. She leaves the office with a new perspective on life. Most of the feelings of satisfaction have gone away already, but still she feels renewed, ready to tackle her issues so she can feel what she felt in the straitjacket again, so she can feel normal. By the next day, though, her new lease on life is completely gone, and she's on the phone with the man pleading with him to let her come in immediately and wear the straitjacket again. He warned her, though, that it was a one-off procedure. Too much exposure is dangerous. She needs to focus on other treatments instead. The woman only wants to come wear it for a little bit, though, just a few minutes to feel that way again. He tells her it's impossible, though. She should be happy it was so successful and move on to new techniques. And besides, he's leaving for a conference and won't be back for a week. They can discuss things again when he gets back. It's raining that night as a figure in a dark coat breaks the glass on the front door and reaches through to unlock the door. The woman enters the office and hangs her wet jacket on the wall. Her flashlight illuminates the room they have their sessions in. No one is there. She walks deeper into the building and spots the door to the padded room. She passes by and goes even further to a back room that she's never been in before. In the room, against a wall, is a metal trunk. She opens it to find the dark garment bag with the leather straitjacket inside. "What do you want me to do again?" the young man asks. He was just supposed to be delivering a pizza, and his boss would be angry to learn that he allowed a customer to invite him in. "This is my office," she tells him, "and I'm working on some new techniques for my patients, but I need to try them out myself first. That makes sense, right?" "Well, sure, I guess," he responds. "But for this particular one, I need some help. It's a secret, though, so I can't get any of my colleagues to help me. But you can help me, right?" The young man nervously swallows the soda she's given him and nods in agreement. She explains that all he has to do is help her tighten the straitjacket, close the door, turn off the lights, and listen. In a little while, when she's finished, she'll ask him to come inside and take it off her. That's it. The young man still seems a little wary of the request. "What happened to your door?" he asks, but she ignores his question and pushes a wad of cash into his hand. The young man shuts the door to the padded cell, and a moment later, the lights go out. The woman is almost immediately taken back to the same mental place she was before. All of the thoughts that constantly repeat in her mind, the ones that she's never able to turn off, suddenly go quiet. She sighs with relief in her dark, safe space. But then, she feels something. Not in her mind, but on her face. A twitch, just a little facial spasm. But then another. There's something wrong. Her face suddenly feels very tight, like it's being stretched. Her eyes grow wide. Her mouth pulls into an unintentional sneer. The young man hears the woman's muffled cries from inside the room and opens the door. But what he sees causes him to emit his own scream before he turns and runs out of the office into the stormy night. "What the heck?" the man thinks as he looks at the broken window on his office door. He enters to see that the door is still unlocked and that there's glass on the floor inside. He walks inside his office and looks around and doesn't see anything. But in an instant, there's a moment of realization. He runs to the back, to the door to the padded cell. The door to the room is ajar, and he listens. Is that breathing inside? He opens the door to the dark cell and turns on the light. The black leather straitjacket is sitting in the middle of the floor, except it isn't the floor anymore. Now, instead, a stretched layer of skin is spread across the padded room, with the outline of flattened bones visible underneath. The man's mind can't comprehend what it is that he's looking at, but then he sees it. In the far corner of the room is the stretched out face of the woman, her eyelids pulled too tight to blink, leaving her eyes staring up at him. Through a stretched, contorted mouth, she whispers, "Help me." Is there anything crueler than an object that is able to treat your mental health issues, yet has some of the most devastating side effects imaginable? In this humble doctor's opinion, no. And today's anomaly is just such an object. Designated SCP-482, it is perhaps better known as the mentally mutating straitjacket. SCP-482 is a black leather straitjacket that is quite similar in appearance and construction to a mass-produced version, though as you'll see, it is completely unique. Although the straitjacket is comparable in size to other medium-sized versions, it is somehow able to fit virtually any and all body types and sizes. A tag inside contains the words, "Made in Xiaoyan, hand wash only, no acerahena powder," in faded text, though neither the city nor acerahena powder appear to exist in any records that the SCP Foundation has been able to locate. There are no signs of wear on SCP-482, but there are several cuts on the straps that cinch the garment closed, and testing has shown that it is able to be further damaged, though any additional investigations of the extent to which it can be damaged have been suspended due to the lack of viable duplicates. The real anomalous effects of SCP-482 occur when the straitjacket is worn, and the two main effects, which occur one after the other, have been designated as time point alpha and time point beta. Time point alpha is used to refer to the initial stage of a subject wearing SCP-482 and can last a varied period of time, though it is most often between 1 and 6 hours of wear. During this period, the subject will report feeling mentally better, and any negative mental afflictions that they suffer from or are forced to deal with will appear to disappear completely. Additionally, any medications that they may be on will have their effects negated entirely, leading to them returning a result on Foundation standard psychological tests that is consistent with a baseline mentally stable individual. The effects of time point alpha are temporary, and once the subject is separated from SCP-482, any mental illnesses they are living with will be seen to return, but they will disappear once more if the straitjacket is worn again. However, the amount of time a subject spends experiencing the effects of time point alpha are cumulative, and given enough time inside of the straitjacket, they will always eventually reach the second stage of SCP-482. Time point beta refers to the subsequent time period that passes if a subject is still wearing SCP-482 once time point alpha lapses. During this period, the changes to the subject will no longer be mental, and instead, they will begin to experience physical effects. The exact nature of the physical changes will vary, though they do seem to be related in some way to the subject's own mental health issue, with the degree of the change also seemingly related to the severity of their issue. Through the testing of SCP-482 by Foundation researchers on D-Class personnel, a number of different manifestations of the straitjacket's anomalous effects have been documented, and they're recorded in a file designated Experiment Log SCP-482. In the first test, a male D-Class diagnosed with schizophrenia was placed inside of the leather straitjacket. He immediately reported feeling eerily calm, and he was observed to simply sit and stare at the wall with a blank expression for 2 hours and 49 minutes, a period which was later determined to be his time point alpha. Time point beta began 1 minute later at 2 hours and 50 minutes when the subject's body began to contort, and he remarked that he was in a great deal of pain. Various parts of the subject's body began to increase in mass and size, including his head, as his eyes began to bulge out. He called in agony while attempting to make eye contact with the researchers who were observing through a glass viewing window for 34 minutes until a termination order was given. Subsequent examination of the subject's body revealed that his body mass had increased by roughly 180% due to rapid bone and muscle growth. It's unclear what physical process caused this, though genetic tests showed that his DNA had abnormally shortened telomere strands. The observers also reported they experienced an unnatural feeling that rendered them unable to move in a normal manner while the subject was making eye contact with them. For the second test, another male D-Class, though one who had been diagnosed with a paranoid personality disorder, was placed in the straitjacket. During his alpha exposure, he reported a satisfying quiet in his head, with none of the disembodied voices that normally plagued his thoughts speaking to him. He still appeared content after 2 hours and was taken out of the suit, though after requesting to be placed back inside, he was allowed to return to wearing SCP-482. After an additional 1 hour and 30 minutes, though, the beta exposure began. Visible bulges appeared on his neck and shoulders, and after 4 minutes, he began screaming for someone to stop talking and get out of his head. More bulges appeared on his body, and audio recording equipment in the room picked up mysterious sounds that analysis has revealed to have been as many as 7 distinct voices speaking in an unknown language. The termination order was issued 25 minutes later, and a later autopsy revealed that each bulge actually contained a fully formed mouth and voice box. Observing researchers also reported that during the test, they had seen flashes of movement in their peripheral vision, and subsequent review of the taped footage revealed small shadows appearing and disappearing in the room throughout the test. Next up was a female D-Class who had been diagnosed with hyperphagia, which is a disorder that can cause an extreme increase in appetite and can remove the ability to satiate one's hunger. Upon being placed in SCP-482, she remarked that, "For the first time ever, I am actually full." She felt this way for 1 hour and 58 minutes, after which she began to feel a pain in her abdomen. The D-Class fell into the fetal position as the pain increased, and her limbs were observed to begin retracting into her body, accompanied by loud snapping sounds as presumably the bones started to crack and break. "Oh God, it's eating me! Oh God, it hurts!" she cried out, and a termination order was immediately issued. The autopsy that followed revealed that the woman's body had somehow formed a second digestive system that had begun to consume her own body mass, and if left unchecked, would have eventually digested it in its entirety. Following this test, the observing researchers reported that they were unable to satisfy their own hunger cravings with normal amounts of food, and several of them actually had to be restrained by security staff in the on-site cafeteria. Luckily, these urges appeared to fade after several days. In the final test, a D-Class personnel with pyromania was placed in SCP-482. Despite the impulse control disorder normally causing them to start fires whenever given the chance, they now ignored all of the flammable materials offered to them by researchers. After 1 hour and 33 minutes, though, thermometers in the testing room noted a sudden sharp rise in temperature. This was followed by a powerful explosion of heat and flames when the D-Class spontaneously ignited. The testing room was completely destroyed, and nearby hallway A13 suffered catastrophic damage. All observing researchers were also lost in the conflagration. SCP-482, though, survived. Surprisingly, the body of the D-Class was also able to be recovered, and though the autopsy was made difficult due to the heat it still exuded, a discovery was made. Inside the body, a new organ was found, one that appeared to be sustaining some type of constant reaction that produced heat, as well as strong magnetic waves, and this organ has been placed in containment for future study. SCP-482 is currently being kept in a containment locker at a secure site, with access restricted to Level 2 personnel and above. The maximum time allowed for testing is 1 hour after mutations manifest, and any test subjects who reach time point beta are to be terminated. Following termination, SCP-482 is to be removed from their body prior to autopsy. The straitjacket is then to be thermally cleansed and all biological traces of the prior subject removed before it is used for testing again. Now I bet you are telling yourself, well, this sounds pretty easy to contain. I bet this is a safe class anomaly. And normally, I would agree with you. But perhaps you noticed something strange in the experiment log. Did you pay attention to the reports from observing researchers that they too had begun to experience some rather unusual effects simply from watching SCP-482 affect a subject? Did it seem to you as though the mentally mutating straitjacket was somehow projecting the mental illnesses experienced by the subjects onto those observing it? It appears that there may be more to SCP-482 than first meets the eye, and this mystery only deepens when one reads the containment procedures on this anomaly's file and realizes that the person overseeing SCP-482 research is none other than SCP Foundation legend, Dr. Bright. Is the actual testing of SCP-482 not actually taking place on the D-Class personnel, but on the SCP Foundation researchers? A convoluted experiment designed to discover the true extent of its anomalous effects. When it comes to this Euclid-class anomaly, only Dr. Bright knows for sure.
A group of friends are driving down the highway late at night. They're on their way home from a concert, and after the long night of dancing and partying, all of them are feeling quite tired. The radio is turned off, and after so much loud music, the silence is refreshing. No one is talking at all, and in fact, the driver notices that both his girlfriend sitting next to him, as well as his friend in the back seat, have fallen asleep. The driver tries to make sure that he doesn't do the same as the car moves down the long stretch of straight, empty highway. The driver's eyes start to grow heavy, though. He can feel the weight of sleep starting to press on him. He turns the radio on at a low volume, but that only staves off the drowsiness for a moment. He can't fight the approach of sleep any longer, and his eyes start to close. As he drifts off to sleep, his foot presses down slightly more on the accelerator. The driver's head slumps to the side as the car gains speed and begins to pull to the right of where it crosses the white line marking the edge of the highway. The tires dip off the road into the dirt, and the sudden change causes the driver to jerk back awake. He quickly swerves the car back onto the road. The sudden jolt causes both the passengers to wake up. Is everything okay? The driver tells them that he just swerved to avoid an animal in the road. That's right, nothing to be worried about. They can go back to sleep. As both of his friends close their eyes and try to go back to sleep, the driver spots something. Lights have appeared in his rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. He didn't notice a car pulling out or speeding up behind him, but he must have missed it when he was dozing off. His heart is still racing from when he drifted off the road, and he's trying to regain his composure, but it's about to get a whole lot harder, because when he looks in the mirror again, He sees that the telltale red and blue lights of a police cruiser have lit up behind him. "Oh crap, oh no," the driver says out loud. Everyone is awake now and aware of the cop behind them. They grow nervous and start freaking out. Not all the activities they had partaken in at the concert were, strictly speaking, technically legal in this state. "What do we do?" the driver asks. "You've got to pull over," says his girlfriend. The cop car's sirens come on. This is serious. But then something strange happens. They hear a voice in the car, coming over the radio. It's too quiet to hear, but when the driver turns up the volume, the message comes through loud and clear. It's a gruff voice that keeps repeating the same phrase over and over. "You better run." How is this message coming over the radio? They don't know, but the passenger in the back seat agrees with the voice. They've got to try and run. They have to get out of here. The driver's girlfriend is screaming to pull over. The cop car speeds up and is right behind them now, almost on their bumper. Its lights flashing and sirens blaring. The driver doesn't know what to do. Should he pull over? Should he try to run? Everyone is yelling. He starts to push down on the accelerator, but then thinks better of it. There's no way this old car can outrun a cop. Finally, he makes the decision to brake and starts to pull the car to the side of the road. The police car comes to a stop behind them. The sirens are off, but the bright lights are almost blinding. They sit in the car and await their fate. But nothing happens. The car is just sitting there behind them. After what feels like a long while, the door of the cop car finally opens. The three passengers watch silently as a highway patrol officer steps out and begins approaching their car. The driver tells everyone to relax, that this is going to be just fine, but the passenger in the back starts to panic. He can't get arrested. If he does, it will mean that he loses his scholarship. He'll get kicked out of school. His whole life will be over. The highway patrol officer reaches the car. Despite it being late at night, he's wearing dark aviator sunglasses that cover half of his face. He stands in front of the door to the car and waits. The driver, feeling nervous and afraid, rolls down his window. The police officer doesn't move or react, though. He just keeps standing next to the car. Good evening, officer," the driver says. No response. The driver turns and looks at his girlfriend in the front seat, but all she can do is shrug. He turns back to the highway patrolman. "Did we do something wrong?" There's another long pause, but then the patrolman finally reacts. He bends over and leans in close, sticking his head practically through the open window and putting his tight-lipped face right next to the driver's. Do you want my license and registration?" the driver asks. The patrolman doesn't respond. He reaches up and slowly grabs the side of his dark aviator sunglasses. He pulls them down, and the driver finds himself staring into a pair of bright, red, glowing eyes. Evil eyes. Everyone in the car starts to scream as the thing standing in front of them opens its own mouth to reveal a big, black, gaping hole with no gums or teeth, a horrifying void in its face that screams right back at them. As you may have already deduced, this was no normal traffic stop, and certainly not a normal highway patrol officer. No, the entity that this group of young adults encountered that evening was one that dozens before them had the same misfortune of running into, and one that the SCP Foundation is actively trying to stop from engaging in its frightening and dangerous behavior. This is SCP-973. SCP-973 is not one, but actually two separate entities. The first, designated SCP-973-1, is a police cruiser that appears to be a model similar to those used by actual state troopers during the early 1970s, and its condition is much like you would expect for a well-used, nearly 50-year-old vehicle, with much of it being in an advanced state of disrepair. Eyewitness accounts of SCP-973-1 have described the police car as having numerous dents on the doors and hood, cracks in the windshield, multiple rust spots, and a rear bumper that looks to be held on with duct tape. The vehicle's driver and sole occupant has been designated SCP-973-2. This humanoid figure has an appearance that resembles a Caucasian male in his late 40s. It is dressed in a state trooper uniform that, like 973-1, also looks to have come from the early 1970s. And eyewitnesses have described him as being slightly overweight, balding, and sporting a handlebar mustache. Both the anomalous car and its driver will appear at night in a specific location along a particular U.S. highway. It is unknown exactly what will cause SCP-973 to show up on this road, but Foundation researchers have hypothesized that its manifestation may be triggered when a vehicle accelerates over a certain speed. You may think you're safe then if you stay below a certain speed, but unfortunately, you'd be wrong. It's unknown exactly what speed limit infraction will lead to SCP-973's appearance, with reports ranging from 35 miles per hour all the way to 70. But when it does occur, the driver will find that they are now a target. SCP-973 will materialize roughly half a kilometer behind the targeted vehicle and will approach them at a high rate of speed. SCP-973-1 sirens will turn on and its lights will flash, as it also somehow broadcasts a message into the targeted car that is picked up on the car's radio, a message that urges the driver to run, often accompanied by several expletives. In most cases, the targeted vehicle will abide by the instructions over the radio and begin to flee, though it's unlikely that this is due to any mimetic effect. Rather, it would seem that most run out of pure terror. SCP-973 will then pursue the targeted car, leading to a high-speed chase. No matter how fast the targeted car is, though, the SCP-973-1 police cruiser will always be faster. And it typically takes no more than 6 minutes for them to be overtaken. SCP-973 seems to have no qualms about ramming into the fleeing car, which likely accounts for the extreme damage present on the patrol car. While it is unclear exactly what happens once 973 forces the targeted vehicle to stop, either through their own choice or by being rammed off the road, the results are quite disturbing. The vehicle that fled will later be located somewhere near SCP-973's spawning location, usually within roughly 6 kilometers of the road. Whether the vehicles that are found that far from the road drove there in a panic or were somehow transported there by anomalous means isn't clear. What is clear is that the occupants of the cars met a truly grisly fate. Their bodies will show signs of extreme violence and assault, including evisceration, and some have been so badly maimed and mangled that visual identification was impossible. The vehicles themselves are badly damaged, showing signs of impact from another vehicle, and severe burn damage is often present in the interior. So far, over 34 individuals and 19 vehicles have been designated as victims of SCP-973, though it is likely that the true number is much, much higher. Perhaps most terrifying of all is that some of the victims survived. The Foundation has recovered 5 individuals from sites of SCP-973 attacks, who, in addition to their gruesome physical injuries, also suffer from varying levels of ongoing mental trauma. But why not just destroy the road that SCP-973 appears on, you ask? Well, the Foundation had this same idea, and in 1983, the section of highway affected by SCP-973 was demolished, in an attempt to stop it from manifesting. This attempt failed, though. All this led to was SCP-973 changing its location, where it immediately began engaging in the same deadly behavior. Numerous attempts have also been made to try and capture both 973-1 and -2. In one such event, several teams of SCP Foundation containment specialists were dispatched to its section of highway with the mission to subdue and contain the anomaly. After multiple attempts to get SCP-973 to appear by driving down the highway at various speeds, a car carrying several agents was finally successful, and they spotted the flashing red and blue lights of 973-1 behind them as the message telling them to run began playing over the radio. With no further warnings, the anomalous police car closed in on them, even faster than the agents were expecting, and immediately began ramming into their car. A van filled with additional containment specialists was dispatched to the area to help, and when they reached the area that the GPS tracker on the pursued car led them to, they found that they were too late. SCP-973 had pushed the agent's car far off the road and was ruthlessly tearing their bodies apart. The arriving containment team immediately began firing on 973 in an attempt to save their fellow Foundation agents. The team's weapons appeared to cause some injuries to 973-2, showing that it is perhaps vulnerable to lasting damage just like the 973-1 vehicle is. In a post-mission interview, one of the agents described SCP-973's new appearance. His eyes were red, and his mouth, it was just a black hole. No teeth, no tongue, just a hole. No other reports would come from this incident, though, as this agent was the only survivor. SCP-973 killed the other 9 agents and fled the scene. While it is believed that the Foundation team was able to wound the anomalous creature, it was neither contained nor incapacitated in any real sense, and the next report of a 973 incident occurred just 9 days later. SCP-973's ability to seemingly appear at a new location and the difficulty it has shown in being contained has gotten it a well-earned Euclid classification. The roughly 60 kilometers of highway on which it is known to appear is under satellite surveillance at all times, and all traffic between 10 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. is diverted along a non-highway detour route, by force if necessary. Unfortunately for the SCP Foundation and the general highway-using populace, these security protocols have necessitated frequent updates, because while the area that SCP-973 engages in its predatory behavior on is well known, both the time of day during which it will appear and the area it seems to affect are expanding.
You'll be starting out with cold cases, the police chief tells the detective who has just arrived for his first day at the precinct. We've got more than enough to keep you busy, so head on down to the archives and get started. The new detective is looking forward to taking on these unsolved crimes. Cracking the overlooked and long-since forgotten cases is one of his specialties, and it brings him great joy to solve the puzzles that no one else has been able to. The detective heads to a part of the police station that doesn't look like it sees much foot traffic, where he finds the door labeled Archives. Inside the room, the air is musty, and when the detective sets down his bag on a table, a thick cloud of dust is ejected and makes him sneeze. He takes out the list of cases he's supposed to be working on and goes to a shelf containing rows and rows of evidence boxes. He pulls one down and starts looking through the files inside. It's full of police reports, witness statements, crime scene photos, and even bits of evidence. Hours pass as the detective goes down his list, looking through box after box, report after report. He finds that it's best to take a cursory survey first and see if anything leaps out at him, before drilling down to start combing through the details. As he pulls down the last box from his list of cases that the chief told him to work on, he notices something. High up on a shelf, nestled among the many identical cardboard boxes, is what looks to be a piece of leather luggage. He can't help but wonder what this is doing here in the archives. Is it a piece of evidence from another case that got left here for some reason? Or did someone simply forget their bag after they finished looking through old files? Whatever the reason it's here, he has a job to do, and investigating this bag isn't on his list. But then again, he knows he won't be able to focus until he knows what this bag is and what's inside. He'll let himself take just a quick peek, then it's back to work. The detective returns to the shelf with the bag. It looks like it's been here for a long time. There's a layer of dust covering it that's as thick as anything else in the room. He takes it down and blows the dust off the bag. He unlatches it, and inside he finds a folder. Is this just another report? But what's it doing here? Maybe they ran out of boxes one day and someone decided to use an old briefcase instead. The detective takes out the folder and opens it. Just as he suspected, it is another case report. It's only a single page, though, with several photographs paper-clipped to it. He takes the photos off the report and begins looking through them. They appear to be numbered in order, and the first picture shows a mess of red liquid and chunks of what might be meat or bone. The next two show various angles of a badly mutilated corpse. It's been so violently mangled, though, that the victim is barely even recognizable as a human. The detective paperclips the photos back to the report and puts it back in the case. If this murder only has one page of evidence to work with, then he is classifying it as a revisit after literally everything else in the room is solved kind of case. The detective goes back to the last box that he was looking through and starts flipping through the case files again, but something about that leather briefcase and the photos inside won't get out of his mind. Maybe there is something there. Without even realizing it, he's suddenly standing over the case again. He takes out the report and starts looking through the pictures once more. Again, he sees the disfigured corpse from different angles, but the fourth picture is completely different. This one shows what looks to be someone's feet, but they're up in the air, as if they jumped and took a picture of their shoes. There's something wrong with the picture too, some kind of odd discoloration around the edges. It looks like an error occurred in the development process. Why would this be in a case file? It's tugging at his curiosity. But no, he really shouldn't be spending his time on this, not on his first day at a new job. The detective places everything back in the case and puts it back up on the shelf where he found it before deciding to call it a day. That night, he finds that he can't sleep. The detective keeps seeing the disfigured face every time he closes his eyes. And why the picture of floating feet? What does it all mean? His mind is racing, trying to make sense of it all. By the time his alarm starts beeping, the detective realizes that he hasn't slept at all. Later that morning, the detective is back in the chief's office again. The chief tells him that he looks awful and asks if the job is getting to him already. The detective does look terrible, and something about the room is making him very uncomfortable. The ceiling feels too low, like it moved down a foot or two since the last time he was here. It's also very dim. Who can operate in such a dark room? He stands up and asks if he can turn on some more lights, and before the chief can answer, he switches on more. The chief squints from the bright fluorescent lights coming on and tells the detective to get back to work and to make sure he gets some sleep that night. If he can't, then maybe this job isn't for him. The detective returns to the archives to pick up where he left off the day before and goes back to looking through the files on his list. But of course, that leather briefcase always seems to be right in his field of view, reaching out to him, begging him to uncover its secrets. That's it, the detective thinks. He has no choice. He has to know what's going on with this file. He takes the briefcase down again, opens the report, and starts going through the photos again. 3 pictures of a gross corpse, check. Picture 4 showing someone's feet. Nothing new there. Now it's time to finally look at the rest. The 5th picture is similar to the 4th, but the person's feet look a little closer to the ground. Wait a minute. Are these in reverse order? He looks at the next. This one doesn't have anyone in it. It's a picture of a table, and it looks like there is writing on it, though the writing is very small. He leans in close and squints, but he still can't make it out. He runs to his own bag and searches around until he finds what he was looking for, a magnifying glass. He goes back to the picture, and with the magnifying glass he can finally read the writing. It's above you. He snaps his head up and looks above him, but nothing is there. He laughs to himself. Of course nothing is there. Maybe the chief is right. Maybe something really is getting to him and he isn't cut out for this job. But still, he needs to learn more. He looks at the 7th picture. He sees now that he was right. These are definitely in reverse chronological order. In the next picture, he sees whoever took the photos approaching the table in the room. In the 10th photo, he sees them walking through a doorway. In the 11th, he sees them opening the door to the room. Finally, he comes to the last photo. It's a photo of the closed door to the room. There's writing on the door, and the detective can hardly believe what he is seeing when he reads it. The writing on the door says, "Archives." The detective jumps up and spins around, but the room is empty. There's no one here but him. What's going on? Is this some kind of prank? He picks up the report the pictures were attached to. There must be some answers in there. The paper appears to be a standard police report that was filled out following the discovery of a homicide. The top of the page lists the address where the murder took place. It's the very place he is now, the police station's address. Next to it is the date. It's impossible, though. The date is today's. Archives can hold untold secrets, and many of those are often quite dangerous, as anyone familiar with the SCP Foundation is already well aware. Rarely is the file in the archive itself the danger, but that is exactly the case with SCP-767, a deadly series of crime scene photos that are anything but what they seem. SCP-767 is the designation for a series of anomalous objects, which were recovered from a police department's own archives. They include a series of 12 Polaroid photographs, which have been given the designation SCP-767-1 through 12, that appear to be the source of the anomalous properties surrounding the objects. Each photograph is labeled 1 through 12 in the lower left-hand corner, though they appear to be labeled in reverse chronological order. When viewed in reverse, that is, starting with the picture labeled 12, the photos depict a first-person perspective of someone entering a room and examining a table. The table will have writing on it, which alternates between the iterations of SCP-767, and will either read, "It's above you," or "On the ceiling," written with a red substance that appears to be fresh blood. The next photos continue to be from a first-person perspective, and will show the person taking the photos being lifted up into the air above the table, with wisps of black smoke visible around the edges of the frame, that look at first glance like either photo development issues or damage to the picture. The final 3 pictures depict a fresh corpse that has been so heavily mutilated by lacerations that it is completely unrecognizable, while the last picture shows a body that appears to have been virtually liquefied in some way, with gore and viscera spread around the room. The origin of these photos is unknown, and it's unknown if they were ever taken at all or merely manifested in some way. When the photos are taken to a new location and are allowed to remain there for 1 week, they will change to reflect a room within the building where they are being kept, with the individual portrayed in the photos being an image of the last person to experience the photo's frightening effects. More on what those are later. The ability of SCP-767 to change based on the location it is in is also present in SCP-767-13 and 14, which are the police report and the brown leather valise that always accompany the photos. The police report has an address and date at the top, both of which will somehow change to reflect the current date and location of SCP-767, while the leather briefcase has a gold monogram on it that will change to whatever the name is of the owner or head of the structure that it is contained in. But that is far from where the anomalous properties of SCP-767 end. Individuals who are exposed to the photographs will experience a wide range of effects that are based on how far into the photo series they look. Those that view SCP-767-1 through 3 will report feeling no special effects, besides the normal reaction one has to seeing a badly mutilated corpse, with most describing the photos as weird or disturbing. Those that view the photos labeled 4 through 6, though, will usually report that they have developed feelings of claustrophobia, with many also reporting a newfound bout of nyctophobia, that is, fear of the dark, or more specifically, a fear of the potential for bad things to happen in the dark. These fears will also vary in intensity based on how many of the photos were viewed. Subjects who are exposed to the 7th, 8th, and 9th photos will feel an overwhelming desire to inspect the ceiling, and most are observed snapping their heads upwards immediately after reading the writing on the table in the photo. In later interviews, subjects have described the feeling as instinctual, or as if someone had yelled the words at them like a warning. Following this, the subject will experience a sensation of being watched and will usually report having persistent chills. Those who view the final 3 photos will appear to suffer a fear-induced paralysis effect when they attempt to move away from the photos. A shadowy, black, effervescent mass will begin to form on the ceiling directly above the subject, which has been designated SCP-767-15, though the presence of this mass has only been reported by in-person witnesses, as it doesn't appear on photographic or video recordings. Tendrils of the gaseous material will reach down from the mass and grab the affected subject, lifting them up into the air before violently attacking them. The subject will suffer deep lacerations as the tendrils cut into it before it completely destroys them, leaving them as little more than a pool of blood and pieces of flesh. The nature of this dark cloud of gas, where it comes from, or why it engages in this behavior is currently unknown, and attempts to stop it once it has gotten hold of its victim have only led to those who intervene being pushed away by a powerful force, with all weapons passing harmlessly through the mass. In the time since its discovery by the SCP Foundation, multiple other unsolved cases of victims that appeared to suffer similar fates have been identified, and investigations into whether they are connected to SCP-767 and the 767-15 entity are ongoing. The SCP-767-1 through 12 photos are to be kept inside of the SCP-767-13 report, which is itself stored within the brown leather SCP-767-14 valise. And the entire group is kept at an SCP Foundation Hazardous Items Secure Containment Center. Due to the little we understand about its nature or origin, the entirety of the anomalous objects that make up SCP-767, including the SCP-767-15 entity, have been classified as Euclid, and any access to the objects requires written authorization from at least one Level 4 site administrator. SCP-767 may not be the most dangerous file in the SCP Foundation's archive, but it may just be the most dangerous literal file. There are plenty other surprisingly dangerous objects that can impact you in ways you never expected, though, like SCP-1875, the antique chess automaton that is capable of powerful effects that you have to see to believe.
You're on your way home from work after having just finished working a double shift. It's late, and the interstate is completely abandoned. No cars visible either in front or behind you. It's only about a 20-minute drive, but you know you're going to struggle to stay awake, even in this old beater that shakes and rattles as it travels down the long, straight road. The rattling causes a piece of tape to fall off of the gauge cluster, revealing a lit check engine light beneath. You grab the tape and put it back over the light, covering it once again. There, good as new. You turn on the radio, and it comes to life for just a moment before dying. You slap the radio and it blinks to life for just a second before dying again. You're about to slap it again when you notice lights in your rearview mirror. And more than just a pair of headlights. It's a whole wall of lights. They're getting closer, and quickly too. Before you know it, they look like they're barreling down on you. But then, they suddenly go black, blinking out of existence. Did that trucker just turn off his lights, you think? You have no time to dwell on the thought, because the sound of an explosion suddenly causes you to scream in fright. It sounds like lightning has struck just inches from your car. The inside of your car suddenly lights up with fire and smoke. Has your engine exploded? What's going on? No, it's not coming from you, it's coming from next to you. You don't know where it appeared from, but next to your car is now a massive semi. At least, you think it was a semi. The smoke is so thick it makes you cough, and you quickly can't see. You lose control of the car and slam on the brakes, but you can feel yourself going off the road. As the smoke finally clears up inside of your car, you can see the moon. It's at this moment that you realize you're no longer right side up as the car flips and tumbles through the air. You open your eyes to find that you're still buckled into your seat. You release the seatbelt and drop to the roof of the car. You crawl out to find that your car slid to a stop upside down, several meters from the road. You look around, and far off in the distance, you can see it. The semi that ran you off the road, driving at an almost impossible rate of speed off into the night. You look back at your car, which is completely totaled, and wonder what you're going to do now. It's late the next morning when you finally get back home. The police did not seem to believe your story about the magically appearing semi-truck causing your single-car accident, but they did at least give you a ride back home after administering a sobriety test. You enter your small studio apartment and look around at the sparsely decorated room, wondering how you're going to pay rent next month if you can't get to your job. You go to the fridge and open the door, but there's nothing inside except for a carton of milk that's well past its expiration date. You open it and take a whiff, but this is too far gone even for your state of desperation. You close the fridge and lean on the door, trying to figure out what you're going to do. You're so deep in thought that you barely notice the mail being pushed through the slot in your door. You decide to go pick it up, even though you know it will only be bad news. And you were right. Bills, bills, and more bills. First, second, and final notices. You wonder if you've ever had a piece of good news show up through that slot in your door. What's this, though? The last piece of mail is a battered and folded envelope that looks like it's been used and repurposed many times. It feels thick and heavy, but there's no information on it at all. It's completely blank. You open the envelope, and your eyes light up. Inside is money. It's a stack of crinkled old bills, different denominations, all in a random order, but there's a lot of them. There must be over $1,000 here. And there's something else, too. A note. You unfold the creased and dirty piece of paper to see a simple message that looks like it was hastily written in black crayon. All the note says is, "Sorry about last night. Hope this helps, compadre." You flip the note over and look in the envelope again, but there's nothing else other than the wad of cash. The apology note may have been unsigned, but you weren't the first to receive something like it, and you would be far from the last. The SCP Foundation, though, knows exactly who sent it. This was a message from SCP-3899, also known as the Night Hauler. SCP-3899 is a black Peterbilt 379 semi-trailer truck with an attached trailer, but as you no doubt have determined, this is no ordinary truck. SCP-3899 has the anomalous effect of appearing seemingly at random upon stretches of highway within the continental United States, and usually at a considerable distance away from any other motorists. The truck will manifest already in motion, traveling within roughly 3 kilometers per hour of the posted speed limit, but it will not stay at this speed. Once SCP-3899 has appeared, it will almost immediately begin accelerating, and the speeds it can reach are truly staggering. Despite appearing to be a normal truck, SCP-3899 is able to reach impossibly fast speeds, and it's been observed traveling at over 420 kilometers per hour, or 267 miles per hour. As SCP-3899 flies down the road, it will attempt to avoid other vehicles and roadside objects, and has even been shown the ability to displace itself across short distances, which it seems to mostly do in order to avoid collisions with vehicles. SCP-3899 will disappear and then immediately appear somewhere else, though always within 300 meters of its last location. This reappearance will be accompanied by a thick cloud of dense, black smoke that lab tests have revealed to consist of a mixture of diesel fuel combustion byproducts, volcanic ash, and trace amounts of unidentified human blood. The anomalous truck will only appear at night and will demanifest completely once it encounters direct sunlight, or if it causes an automotive accident, which it has done plenty of times. In one particular incident, undercover SCP Foundation agents working within the Virginia State Department of Transportation became aware of reports of a large black truck appearing on a particular stretch of interstate that had caused multiple accidents. They were able to track down and locate one of the victims of these incidents, a woman named Martha Lewis, who they soon brought in for questioning under the guise of it being a police investigation. The agents questioned Martha on her experience, and she explained her own interaction with the black semi. She said, "It's all still clear in my head. I'm driving down I-64 on my way home and the sun had just gone down. There's no other cars and I'm about to take my exit when out of nowhere this huge truck just appears right next to me. There's a bunch of smoke, like it was on fire or something, and the sound was like a bolt of lightning had just struck right next to me. It all happened so fast. All the smoke clouded my windshield, and before I could really process what was happening, I was plowing right through a concrete divider and into some trees. I think I passed out. When I came to, there were paramedics and cops. They took me to the hospital." The agents asked if anything happened after that, and she said there was one other odd thing. When she left the hospital and went home, there was a letter waiting for her, but it didn't have a return address. Inside was a large amount of U.S. currency in a random assortment of denominations, with many of the bills appearing wrinkled and worn. There was a note in the envelope too, which read, "I'm sorry, didn't mean no harm. For the damages, get y'all a new rig and drive on." Later Foundation analysis of the document revealed that the note was written with a piece of charcoal on non-anomalous notebook paper. Now you're probably asking yourself the same question that the SCP researchers had. Just who is the driver of SCP-3899 that apparently wrote this odd note and also paid for the damages they caused? The operator of the truck, which has been designated as SCP-3899-1, is a very mysterious figure. Observers who have been able to get a brief glimpse inside of the truck as it moves past them at a rapid speed have described the driver as looking only like a silhouette of a slightly overweight male wearing the type of headwear that is typically referred to as a trucker hat. Some reports have also alluded to the presence of what appears to be smoky, tentacle-like appendages within the cab, though all further efforts to determine the exact physical characteristics of 3899-1 have failed, as the truck has proved resistant to any kind of outside scanning equipment. Most of what is known about the driver has come in the form of direct communication, though not in the form of interviews or any other sort of face-to-face interaction. No, while SCP-3899-1 has never been willing to stop and have a discussion with Foundation agents, it does seem more than willing to speak with anyone and everyone in its immediate vicinity over Citizens Band, or CB radio, which is a type of shortwave person-to-person communication system that is popular with many long-haul truckers. In one particular instance, an SCP Foundation helicopter happened to be traveling above a stretch of road where SCP-3899 appeared. An agent within the helicopter began communicating with the anomalous trucker, first asking for their call sign, to which SCP-3899-1 replied,
"I'm the Night Hauler and I'm coming in hot. I know y'all can feel this speed."
After adjusting their volume to compensate for 3899-1's loud response, the agent asked if the entity could explain where they came from. 3899-1 answered with,
"I roll with the wind. My wheels sing sweet love to the blacktop. I'm filling y'all's veins with road salt and exhaust and the smell of burning rubber. Ain't no bother where I'm from. We all gotta live for the ride and die for nothing."
"I see," the agent responded, before asking, "Are you hauling anything in particular?" SCP-3899-1 came back with,
"Ain't you listening, girl? You seeing this? What I got is pure rattling salvation. 18 wheels at a time. When y'all's roads is choked, when the ways is blocked and y'all's speed is all dead and gone, I'm dropping this load and we'll all be drinking gas and breathing smoke."
The agent didn't understand, though, and asked again who they were and what they wanted. 3899-1 replied,
"This is for the souls of the road, for the long nights and dead engines, and everyone trying to put that horizon under their wheels. I am the roar of hot iron. I am screaming freedom. I am the death of all barriers. This rig ain't got no quit, honey. I do not stop. Can you feel the rumble? Can you see the fire and smell the burn? I know you can. I can taste your heart, and I know you want to fly apart with me."
When the agent began to answer in the affirmative that they could indeed, quote, feel the rumble, seemingly caught up in the excitement of SCP-3899-1's proclamation, the investigation was quickly halted and the helicopter broke off from its pursuit. Following this incident, the potential mimetic influence of communicating with 3899-1 is under investigation. SCP-3899, being currently uncontainable by any conventional means, has been classified as Keter, a Upon reports of it manifesting, all CB radio transmissions emanating from the truck are monitored by nearby Foundation listening posts for attempted contact by SCP-3899 to civilian recipients. Any individuals who are contacted are to be administered Class B amnestics, as are any eyewitnesses of the truck itself. All information about SCP-3899 is to be suppressed, and a disinformation campaign is active to make all reports of a mysterious truck that can appear out of nowhere and move at impossible speeds seem like nothing more than an urban legend. Just what is SCP-3899? Is the driver some sort of anomalous ghost, or perhaps an old, eldritch god, a manifestation of freedom and perpetual motion given physical form as a diesel-powered behemoth on the highway? Perhaps the answer to that question is up to you.
Air travel used to be an event. People climbed aboard planes in their best dress, their finest suit, sat in seats with plenty of legroom, and really relished the opportunity to soar through the sky from destination to destination. Now, flying has become, ironically, pedestrian. Sure, some people still take it seriously and revel in the miracle of flight, but most treat it the same as riding a Greyhound bus. For the businessman, with his carefully packed carry-on and phone loaded with news podcasts to pass the time, that is exactly how it feels. Flying is a chore, one he wishes he didn't have to deal with. But sadly, he has no choice. Not if he wants to keep being the most valuable employee at his job, the one who never says no to a request from the boss. He's garnered a reputation as a real team player, which really means guy who's up for anything the company requests, no matter how boring, annoying, or exhausting. It's gotten him pretty far, and now that he's up for a promotion that would double his salary, he's certainly not going to give up the habit now. So here he is, stepping out of his taxi at the international airport, ready to hop on the longest flight of his life, 20 hours, non-stop, to Australia for a conference. No one else wanted to deal with the jet lag, the leg cramps, the claustrophobia. So, of course, the helpful-to-a-fault businessman volunteered. He rolls his small suitcase, precisely measured to meet the size standards for a carry-on, because he can't risk the airline misplacing his checked bag and stranding him at the conference with no suits, and walks into the airport. He's done this routine dozens of times before, every time pretty much the same. He has it down to a science, as quick and convenient as possible to minimize stress and make the journey go smoothly. He prints his boarding pass, drinks the dregs of his morning coffee, and tosses the cup, and heads to the pre-check line. No waiting in long security check lines for this guy. Wait a second. Why is the pre-check line blocked off? No. There's no pre-check available at this airport? The businessman lets out a heavy sigh, pinching the bridge of his nose for a moment as he gathers his thoughts. This is fine, this is fine. He can just go through the regular security line this time. What's the worst that could happen? It's not like he's running late. He's got plenty of time to make the flight, watch a few bad movies, get some sleep, and wake up on the other side of the world. Resigned to his fate, the businessman joins the security check line for ordinary Joes who didn't bother to spring for pre-check. This is fine, this is fine. The day is still going mostly according to plan. Or so he thinks. As the line inches along, the businessman spots more trouble up ahead. Oh great, they're putting in a new body scanner right now. He can see the engineer, whatever the title is, finishing the setup. No wonder the line is so long. This is the cherry on top of a deeply irritating Sunday. But it's too late to turn back now, not without risking his promotion, or even his job. Better just try to shrug it off and keep going. Maybe he'll get a candy bar when he reaches his gate. A little treat always helps ease the stress of travel. The line is moving at a steadier pace now, and the businessman can feel the tension in his chest easing up, his muscles loosening. Here we go, this is more like it. He slips his shoes off and holds them in his hands, standing in line in his socks. He might look a little silly, but it's the most efficient way to get through security. After what feels like an eternity, it's his turn to go through the security checkpoint. With a self-satisfied smile, he places his shoes in a bin next to his carry-on bag and drops them both on the conveyor belt. One of the TSA agents waves him on, beckoning him to step into the body scanner. He assumes the position, hands over his head, and waits for the queue to step through to the other side. But the queue doesn't come. The TSA agent holds up a hand, gesturing for the businessman to stay where he is. He tries to ask about what could be causing the holdup, but no one answers him. Must be a malfunction with the machine. Perfect. He lets out another heavy sigh. Then, just behind his right ear, he hears a voice.
Rough day, buddy.
The businessman glances over his shoulder, expecting to see a TSA agent standing there. But there's no one. Has the stress of the worst day he's ever had at the airport driven him to hallucinate? He hears it again.
Hey, buddy, you there? Sounds like a rough day.
Maybe there's a speaker embedded in the scanner somewhere for some reason. Just been kinda stressful. I'll feel better when I get on my flight.
Oh, you're traveling. That's fun. Where to?
Australia. It's for this work thing. I'm not especially excited about it, but the boss will love it, so...
Ha! I heard that, my friend. Say, could you do me a favor?
I guess so?
Could you tell me where I am? I just woke up and I can't see anything. Can't really feel anything either. It's all just darkness. And it's kind of freaking me out here.
The businessman scans the area, but no one appears to be paying attention. No one seems to hear the voice. Is that because it's lost in the din of airport chatter? Or because it's all in his head? We're at the airport.
Airport? How do I get to the airport? Listen, buddy. I need you to help get me out of here. My wife, my daughter, they'll be looking for me. I don't know how long I've been gone. I need to get home. Can you help me?
Privately, the businessman thinks that he really doesn't have time for this, but out loud he says, "Sure. It's just that I don't really know where you actually are, or how you're talking to me through this scanner thing."
What do you mean? I'm right here. Talking out of my mouth. I'm not... What the hell are you talking about?
The businessman is beginning to lose his patience. Something about this situation is just not right. No one should be talking to him through the broken security scanner. The TSA should be letting him through, and he should be sitting at his gate right now. His built-up grievances spill out through his mouth. "I don't have time for this," he shouts. The TSA agent turns to look at him. "I promise, sir, we're working to fix the issue as fast as we can. There's no need to shout," she says. The voice in the scanner was speaking in a hushed tone before, a conspiratorial whisper, but now it's growing louder, more desperate.
You gotta help me, please. My family. I need to get to my family. Why can't I see? Why can't I move? It hurts. It hurts. Don't you understand, you idiot? It hurts.
These words are shouted directly into the businessman's ear. "Stop! Just stop! Stop yelling at me!" Several TSA agents rush over to inspect the businessman, steadying him and gently guiding his hands away from his ears. They ask him if he's feeling all right, if they need to call someone for him. The businessman snaps, shouting that the scanner is broken, and he can hear a voice inside and something is very, very wrong. Well, unfortunately for the businessman, he looks more than a little suspicious now, and one security officer pulls him aside, leading him to a small nearby room for a chat. All the while, the businessman insists that the scanner was talking to him, and that he's not crazy. He won't be leaving that interrogation room anytime soon. Unfortunately for the businessman, he will not be making that flight to Australia. Meanwhile, the scanner is causing interference with the other technology at the checkpoint. The agents are scrambling to solve the problem, to keep the line moving while their colleague addresses an apparent mental health crisis nearby. The line keeps moving, and more impatient passengers walk through the scanner. Just like the businessman before them, they can hear that voice, whispering hushed pleas that turn into anguished shouts. The same male voice, over and over again, begging for answers, begging for help. Someone deeply distressed is speaking through the scanner, and no one can figure out why. One elderly woman breaks down in tears as the voice angrily swears at her. A little girl screams in terror at the sudden sound. A man tries to argue with the voice, the two shouting over each other with increasing fervor. Soon, the voice grows loud enough that the TSA agents can't ignore it. Much to the dismay of the passengers that haven't made it through yet, they close down the line. Slowly, one TSA agent approaches the scanner. "Hello?" she calls out. She feels silly doing it. There's no way someone is using the scanner as a communication device. The technology doesn't work like that. But then, clear as a bell, she hears the response.
Hello? You can help me? Or do I need to keep screaming for someone to listen?
No doubt about it, that is a person. A very distressed person. "How are you speaking to me right now, sir?"
With my mouth. What are you, stupid? I don't want any trouble. Please, just let me go, or I'm gonna lose it. I just want to go home. What is this, some kind of kidnapping thing? Did you drug me?
"Sir, please, we can't help you if you don't tell us how you're speaking through the machine."
There's no goddamn machine. There's just me. Just me. Me.
The voice begins to sob in frustration, and the TSA agent feels a sudden wave of inexplicable nausea sweep through her body. There's no speaker on the machine, nowhere for a voice to emanate from. There's only one solution in sight. They need to take this thing apart. Something is very, very wrong with it. She calls over several of her colleagues, and they begin to fiddle with the machine's outer shell, attempting to loosen and remove it. As they do, a blood-curdling scream rips through the air.
Stop! Please, stop! Whatever you want, I'll do it. Just stop, please!
She signals for the others to stop what they're doing, and the screaming ceases. When the voice speaks again, it sounds defeated, exhausted.
What do you want from me? Is it money? I don't have much, but if you let me go, I'll give you whatever I can. Please. My daughter just turned 5. I just want to see her again.
There was the sound of sobbing again. Somehow, when they tried to open the machine, it hurt the man speaking through it. This just gets weirder and weirder. Meanwhile, the interrogator in the nearby room receives word that the businessman is not, in fact, having a mental health crisis. He really did hear someone speaking through the scanner, someone that everyone can now hear. Whoever this mysterious man is, he will not listen to anyone, will not explain where he is or how he got there. He claims that he was having an ordinary day, lost consciousness, and woke up in total darkness. By the time the businessman is released, however, he has already missed his flight to Australia. That does it. That's the straw that breaks the camel's back. He marches back over to the body scanner, shoving TSA agents out of the way as he goes. He begins kicking at the scanner, shouting a stream of curses and epithets at the one who caused him to miss his very important flight, the one who may have cost him his promotion. Man or machine, it doesn't matter. This thing is his enemy now. The disembodied voice returns the shouts in kind, warning the businessman to back off, or he may not like what comes next. I'm warning you. The businessman laughs derisively, egging on the voice inside the scanner. Oh yeah? What are you gonna do? The businessman soon gets his answer, though he won't live to understand what it meant. As the voice screams, louder than anyone has heard it be so far, the businessman collapses to the ground. His body convulses, and his eyes roll back. A seizure. The TSA agents attempt to interfere, but as they approach the scanner, they too collapse to the ground. Some are seizing, others are just unconscious. They don't know it, but all of them are suffering from extreme radiation poisoning. The crowd of passengers waiting to go through security breaks apart, people scattering every which way in search of help or a quick exit. In the next 48 hours, everyone who collapsed will be dead. After 2 more weeks, several of the bystanders will be dead too, all because of the one faulty scanner and the strange voice speaking from inside. Before the story can make the news, it is suppressed by SCP Foundation agents embedded in the media. All living witnesses are given amnestics, and the airport is temporarily closed. The cover story is an attempted terrorist attack, and people are all too quick to eat it up. No one will ever know the truth of what happened, or the nature of the device that would become known as SCP-1966. SCP-1966 is a backscatter X-ray device built by a redacted engineering group sometime in the 2000s. It is approximately 3 meters by 4 meters by 4 meters in size. It was purchased by the American Transportation Security Administration for use in an international airport. Passive scans of SCP-1966 reveal no discernible difference between the internal structure of this scanner and other body scanners with the same design. However, it is no ordinary scanner. Shortly after the scanner was placed in its designated airport, it began to emit the sound of a human male voice. So far, the Foundation has been unable to determine where the voice originates from within the structure of the scanner. The voice responds to speech and other auditory stimuli in the vicinity of SCP-1966 and appears to belong to a sentient consciousness that resides within the scanner. It will continue to speak whether or not it is connected to a power source. In conversations with Foundation staff, SCP-1966 has claimed to be an insurance salesman from London, Ontario, by the name of Mr. J. It remembers being at its daughter's 5th birthday party, which, coincidentally, occurred the day before the scanner was placed at the airport. After the party, it reports becoming blind and unconscious. According to SCP-1966, it cannot see or experience any other senses other than hearing, the feeling of pain when the scanner is tampered with, and a sense of vibrations in the vicinity. It also appears to know when it is being moved, and when someone is attempting to open its outer casing. When the casing is interfered with, it tends to respond by saying, "Ouch!" and "Stop that!" In terms of the tone of conversation, SCP-1966 can be friendly, or it can be angry to the point of being verbally abusive. Whenever SCP-1966 becomes especially upset, it begins to emit a higher level of ionizing radiation, with levels sometimes spiking to the point of causing immediate fatalities, as well as delayed deaths that occur within 2 weeks of exposure. In order to minimize casualties, it is important that SCP-1966 be kept calm. To this end, Protocol Psi-1966-A was developed. This protocol set a series of rules for Foundation staff to keep in mind while interacting with SCP-1966. First, the entity must always be referred to by the name it gave, Mr. J. If SCP-1966 makes any claims about its memories or identity, they must be accepted without argument or contradiction. Personnel should never reference the Foundation, SCP-1966's current form, its acquisition and history, or where it is being contained. If SCP-1966 expresses any self-destructive urges or sentiments, the on-site director must immediately be notified. Junior staff are not considered qualified to handle this scenario, and swift intervention is necessary to prevent any needless radiation poisoning or casualties. If SCP-1966 asks where it is, or expresses concern about its environment, it should be told that it is currently in the long-term care ward of a Toronto hospital, and that it suffered brain trauma during a car accident. If it asks to speak to its wife or daughter, the only approved response is, "You know you can't talk to them now." This is in reference to the cover story provided to SCP-1966, which is that its wife and daughter died in the same car accident. However, stating this plainly will exacerbate the entity's stress levels and may prove dangerous, so a gentle reminder and correction is preferable. Approximately a year after bringing SCP-1966 into custody, the Foundation tracked down a Mr. J, a London, Ontario-based insurance salesman with a wife and daughter. When interviewed under the guise of a survey, his memories and opinions matched those of SCP-1966 up until the date it was first placed in the airport. He was then observed for 3 years, but nothing anomalous about the man was ever detected. For all intents and purposes, he is a perfectly ordinary, unexceptional man. The most unusual thing about Mr. J is that he has, as far as the Foundation can ascertain, never had contact with SCP-1966. In fact, he has never even set foot in the airport where SCP-1966 was previously in use. Somehow, SCP-1966 has developed an imprint of Mr. J's consciousness, but how exactly that occurred is beyond my understanding. SCP-1966 must be kept in a dedicated bunker 2 kilometers underground. The bunker must have 10-meter thick reinforced concrete walls with an additional 1 meter of radiation shielding in order to prevent any radiation from leaking into the surrounding environment. To further reduce this risk, the location of its bunker must be at least 100 kilometers away from any major cities or population-dense areas, as well as Foundation sites. The current location of SCP-1966's bunker is classified and provided only to those who have received special clearance. The monitoring station for SCP-1966 must be permanently manned by at least 5 Foundation staff with Level 2 clearance or higher. The on-site director for the bunker must have Level 4 clearance and be a certified psychologist. No one may interact with SCP-1966 without the approval of this on-site director, and any interaction with SCP-1966 must conform to Protocol Psi-1966-A. The tale of SCP-1966 has been difficult for me to shake. It is far from the most bizarre anomaly I've researched, or the most dangerous, but there is a compelling tragedy to it. A machine, built only to assist with airport security, found itself suddenly cursed with a consciousness that was not its own. Nothing in the world will convince SCP-1966 that it is not a Canadian family man. Its mind is always occupied by thoughts and memories of a life it will never be able to live. A life that, no matter how real and personal it feels, never belonged to it in the first place. Can any of us be certain we are not suffering from the same folly? How can we be sure that our memories, our names, our very identities, are our own? The notion of self is a fragile thing, and SCP-1966 serves as an unsettling reminder that, no matter how secure we feel about who we are, outside observers may be able to see truths about us that we can never hope to comprehend. I never expected to feel quite so existential over an X-ray scanner.
It's late on a Saturday night in New York City, 11:55 p.m. to be exact. A man is running towards the subway station on 59th Street. He's just gotten off from work at the restaurant where he waits tables, and he's in a hurry to get home and spend some time with his girlfriend. As he approaches the station, he notices something strange.
Someone has placed a wooden barrier in front of the entrance. The man has never seen something like this before, but he hasn't lived in Brooklyn very long. Everything about the station looks normal behind the barrier, and he's in a hurry. He doesn't want to have to go several blocks to the next station, so he hops the barrier. What's the worst that could happen? As the man walks onto the train platform, he starts to second-guess his decision. The platform is empty. And come to think of it, he hasn't seen anyone in the station at all. Maybe he did make a mistake. Maybe the station really is closed for repairs. He turns around to leave, but just as he does, he hears a train. Good. Everything is normal. He checks his watch. 11:57 p.m. on the dot. The train comes to a stop, and its doors slide open. It looks a little older than the trains he usually rides, but it appears to be in perfect shape, and it's going the direction of his home, so he steps on board. Just like the station and the platform, there's no one else on the train. Strange, but he's ridden nearly empty trains before, especially late at night, though usually at this time on a Saturday there's at least a few people on board. Just then, he hears something in the station. He turns to see someone running down the platform crying out. "Stop! Stop!" the man in the Mass Transit Authority vest cries, dropping what looks to be his dinner on the platform as he runs. While the MTA worker is still several feet away, the doors snap shut, and the train begins to move. The MTA worker cries out again to stop, but he knows there's no point. He watches as the train heads down the tracks and disappears into the darkness. With a sigh, he takes out a walkie-talkie and it squawks to life. "We've lost another one," he says. "Hi, I'm Dr. Bob, and this is SCP-052, also known as the Time-Traveling Train. SCP-052 appears to be a standard-looking Type R4 New York City subway train. Official city records state that the train was built in 1932 and decommissioned for scrap in 1975. Despite the fact that it should no longer exist, SCP-052 continues to appear on the Uptown AD track at the 59th Street and 8th Avenue station at exactly 11:57 p.m. every Saturday night. The train appears to be in perfect condition, just the same as when it was built over 80 years ago, and it is marked as an A train. Each Saturday, the train arrives at exactly the same time, opens its doors to accept or discharge passengers for precisely 5 minutes, then closes its doors and disappears until the next week. Where did the train come from? And where does it go in between the weekly appearances? These are questions the SCP Foundation is trying to answer. But perhaps the most frightening aspect of SCP-052 is that once you get on the train, there's no guarantee of ever getting off. Sadly, the majority of subjects that have been observed boarding SCP-052 have not been heard from again. The rare few that have been recovered claim to have boarded the train on various dates, ranging from 1976 all the way to the year 2204, with the latter claiming he thought he was boarding a special 300th anniversary train. Thus far, none of the recovered passengers have reported any memories or knowledge of their time on board the train between entering and exiting. Any passengers spotted disembarking from SCP-052 are to be immediately brought to Site 21 for questioning to determine their origin and assess whether they pose any threat to the current time stream. The Foundation has had great success administering Class A amnestics to passengers who arrived from the past and reintegrating them into society. But any passenger who is identified as being from the future must be held indefinitely to prevent potential disruptions to this reality's time stream, per Order 69-A1 from O5 Council Member 05-9. There are currently 26 recovered passengers being held at Site 21 who fit this description, and there are not yet any procedures in place that would allow for their safe release into modern society, nor has there been any workable theories for how to return them to their original home time. Despite the protocols in place to prevent public access, some passengers from the present have still managed to accidentally board SCP-052, and subjects from other times continue to appear. Following interviews, it's been discovered that some of these subjects arrived from alternate timelines and realities. This raises the question of whether it is possible for SCP-052 to appear in other times and places, which may require the containment of additional locations, and reports of any suspicious activity involving unscheduled trains are being monitored and investigated around the world. Following its initial discovery, several tests were attempted in order to better understand the anomalous train and what may be happening when it is no longer visible. The first test took place on May 31st, 2009. An agent was told to simply board the train. They did as requested, and have yet to be recovered as of the present date. A second test took place a week later on June 6th. This agent too was never recovered, though reports indicate that he may have returned to our timeline in 1980, at which point he was killed in a confrontation that has since been classified. A third test was conducted the next week on June 13th. Once again, the agent was told to board the train and did so. This time, though, the agent returned. Just 2 weeks later, on June 27th, the agent stepped back off the train, with his hands appearing to have been surgically removed. A note had been placed in his pocket that had the simple message, "Send no more," written on it. The agent claims not to remember any of his experiences on the train over the 2 weeks he was gone, or what may have happened to his hands. Following this third test, O5 Command issued orders stopping the use of Foundation agents as passengers on SCP-052. D-Class, due to their disposable nature as convicted felons and death row inmates, were considered as potential replacements for the agents in the exploration of SCP-052, but the risk of releasing them into the past or the future was determined to be too great. Other than the agent who knowingly boarded the train, several other notable passengers have been recovered. One case involved the recovery of a woman who entered the train on July 14, 2012, but was recovered 4 years earlier, on March 8, 2008. She entered the train while on her way home from the theater, and was surprised to learn she traveled 4 years into the past. Because another version of her existed at the time she was recovered, she was held to prevent unwanted temporal effects. Another subject was recovered in 2008 who claimed to be from the year 1976. Although there was nothing physically wrong with him and no risk of time stream disruptions, Foundation psychiatrists recommended that he be held indefinitely, as 32 years was believed to be too long a period of time to successfully reintegrate into society. Perhaps the most interesting recovery was of a man claiming to be a Level 4 supervisor from the SCP Federation, who boarded the train in December of 2124. He said that he had been administered a Class A amnestic prior to boarding, and remembered nothing until his recovery in 2010. While the agent can clearly never be released into society, O5 Command has approved the sharing of classified information about various anomalies, in the hopes that he can provide additional information on possible containment procedures. Because SCP-052 has so far proven impossible to stop or remove from the New York City subway system, it has been classified as Euclid. But its predictable nature means that the Foundation is usually able to prevent the public from encountering it. The 59th Street ABCD station is closed to the public between 11 p.m. on Saturday night and 1 a.m. on Sunday morning, under the pretext of track maintenance. Any passengers seen leaving SCP-052 must be taken to Site 21 for debriefing and processing, and members of the public who simply see SCP-052 may be released after the administration of a Class B amnestic. As for what happens to most of the passengers who board SCP-052 and are never seen from again, we simply don't know. 3 SCP Foundation agents stand before a large warehouse. Their mission is simple: enter the building, find the observation unit that has gone missing inside, recover the data from it, and leave. It should be easy, but the rundown structure they're standing in front of is no ordinary building. This is SCP-015. The leader of the group, a large, muscled man who goes by the codename of Agent 6, slides open a large door on the front of the warehouse, and immediately the whole group is struck by a sight that makes them reconsider just how easy this mission is going to be. In front of them is not a wide-open warehouse floor, but a cramped tunnel leading deeper into the building. The group has a job to do, though, and so the 3 head inside, Agent 2 first, followed by Agent Lon, the data specialist, and finally, Agent 6, the expedition leader in the rear. As they enter the narrow hall of pipes, the light from their flashlights plays off the floor, walls, and ceiling. Flashlights are one of the only items allowed in SCP-015, and they reveal what the researchers had told them in their briefing, that many of the pipes aren't made of standard materials, but instead are all sorts of strange substances like wood, glass, or even bone. The odd series of pipes have formed a twisting tunnel leading deeper into the warehouse. The group must be careful, since the floor is uneven, with pipes occasionally sticking up out of the floor like tree roots, ready to trip the unobservant. The three follow the corridors of pipes along the path that they each had to memorize. As they come to branching paths, Agent 2 speaks the series of turns they must take aloud. Left, left, right, left, right, right again, straight, right. And so on as they go deeper and deeper. They'd have to follow the directions exactly if they hoped to reach the place where the modular robotic vehicle should be. Left, straight, straight again, right. Just a couple more turns and they'd reach the point where the MRV had sent its last signal before going offline. As they walk, though, they find that some of the passageways are getting more difficult to pass. The pipes have closed in at certain points, choking the already small tunnels down to mere crawlways. At one particularly narrow point, the group must get down on their bellies and pull themselves along the ground. After Lon and 2 exit the tight passage, Agent 6 suddenly calls out to the 2 agents ahead of him. "What is it? What's wrong?" 2 asks. "I'm stuck," comes the response from 6. Lon and 2 grab 6's arms and begin pulling. With a loud grunt from all of them, 6 finally comes free. His pant leg is shredded from the thorny wood that one of the pipes in the narrow tunnel is made from, but he's free, and they can continue on. Finally, after what seemed like an hour of walking, they finally find it. The modular robotic vehicle that had been sent in to investigate the current state of SCP-015. There's something very strange about the robot's condition, though. It looks like it has been speared right through its primary observation unit. A smooth black pipe that appeared to be made of dark fabric had pierced the vehicle right through its camera, but the lens didn't appear broken. Instead, it looked as if the pipe had somehow connected with it, docking inside the lens housing as if the 2 parts were made for each other. Other pipes had protruded from the floors and walls as well, snaking into open spots on the vehicle and lifting it up a foot off the ground. They looked over the robot, which was held helpless in the air, its wheels slowly spinning as its internal battery ran down. The agents walked around the MRV, examining it, looking confused about the fate that had befallen it. 6 suddenly broke the silence. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Lon wasn't sure what to do, though. As she got closer to the robot, she noticed that a foul-smelling substance was dripping from the pipe that had merged with the camera. Her job was to remove the data from the MRV, but they also had strict orders not to damage anything in SCP-015. So what was she to do about the robot? Wasn't it technically a part of SCP-015 now? She was worried that if she removed the data cards, then SCP-015 might... Well, she didn't know exactly. 6 didn't buy it, though. The researchers may have told them that 015 reacts, but he could see now that it's just a bunch of weird pipes. Maybe it grows or moves a bit, but how would it even know they were there? It hadn't shown any signs of sentience, let alone sapience. He wasn't going to hang around in here any longer than he had to, though, and if Lon wouldn't get on with it, then he would. 6 moves to the MRV and flips open the data cover on its side. More of the fetid liquid pours out, but he ignores it. Lon and 2 both look at each other. Did the other hear that too? It sounded like steam venting from somewhere deep inside SCP-015. 6 doesn't seem to have heard it, and begins to remove the thin data cards from the MRV. With the data now recovered, he decides to see if he could free the vehicle from the pipes. It wasn't necessarily a mission objective, but why let good Foundation property go to waste when it's right here in front of them? 6 pulls first at the MRV, then the pipes that were running into it, but he can't get it to move. It's completely stuck, seemingly fused to the pipes. "Come on, we've got the data, let's get out of here," 2 says. But 6 isn't done trying. He sets his flashlight down and uses both hands, pushing against the wall of pipes with his foot to gain additional leverage, when suddenly, there's a creaking sound. "Ha! I think I got it." But 6 was mistaken. It wasn't the sound of the MRV coming free that he had heard, but the sound of the floor underneath him giving way. 6 falls into the floor up to his armpits, and the other 2 agents rush to help him. But as they do, they notice the glow and immediate burst of heat coming from the hole. Thickly flowing molten glass begins to fill the hole, and Agent 6 cries for help as they desperately try to pull him free. His cries turn into screams of desperation as they each grab an arm and, after a struggle, finally manage to free him and drag him from the hole. 6 is no longer screaming as he is pulled free, though. His eyes and mouth are locked wide in sheer panic. Lon is now the one who starts to scream, as she realizes that they have pulled only the top half of Agent 6 from the hole above the fiery pit. The bottom half of his body is completely gone, burned away by the heat of the liquid glass. There's no time to be shocked, though, because pipes begin to hiss and ping all around them. A wooden pipe above 2 and Lon suddenly bursts, sending a cloud of dust flying into their faces. It's powdered glass, and it starts to pour out of the broken pipe, covering what's left of 6 completely. 2 spits out a thick stream of blood, his mouth shredded from the glass particles, as Lon desperately tries not to rub them deeper into the cuts in her eyes. They both know they can't stay here, though. They have to run. The pipes are deafening as they move as quickly as they can back the way they came. It sounds like a train is barreling through the building. They're surrounded by chaos. Boiling chemicals pour out of one pipe. Tiny slicing rose thorns spray out of another. They come to a crawlway that's just a couple feet wide, but it's their only way forward, and they have no choice but to enter. 2 dives in and starts crawling. Lon is hesitant, but a blast of steam from a pipe near her head convinces her she has no choice, and she follows after him. 2 wriggles through the narrow passage and is surrounded by more sounds of pipes creaking all around him. Each one seems like it might burst and pour who knows what deadly substance onto him. But he has to suppress his fear and keep moving forward. Finally, he emerges into a wider hallway. He turns and looks back at the hole. Lon should have been right behind him, but there's no sign of her. He sticks his head back in and calls for her. There's no response, but he can hear her still in there, somewhere in the dark, struggling. He has to help her. 2 gets back into the passage and starts crawling. She couldn't have been that far behind him, probably just around the next turn. But as he crawls around the bend, there's nothing there, just another wall of pipes. The passage has been sealed up. It's a dead end. He presses his ear to the wall and can hear Lon screaming on the other side. He hits his flashlight against the pipes in anger. The pipe shakes for a moment, then bursts, spraying out a black liquid that covers his hand. It's some kind of corrosive acid, and he screams as it burns through his gloves to the flesh beneath. He quickly crawls backwards out of the narrow tunnel and emerges back out into the wider passage. Chu cradles his hand, trying not to look at the exposed bone. "I'm sorry," he cries as he runs through the tunnel of pipes towards what he hopes is the exit. "I'll get help. I'll come back, I swear." Lon can't hear his promises, though. She heard what she thought was a pipe burst followed by Chu's cries, but she doesn't know now if he's dead or alive. She decides she has no choice but to go back the way she came. Maybe there's another way out. But after moving just a few inches, her feet touch a solid wall. She's trapped in a space no bigger than a coffin. She feels around, but there's nothing here in the dark. Nothing at all. Just smooth, fuzzy, warm pipes. No, wait. There is something. A gap in the ceiling. But it's just the open end of another pipe. And now, there's something dripping out of it. Droplets of whatever the substance is land on her face, and then a full stream of liquid pours out onto her. She coughs as it gets into her mouth, but then realizes that it's sweet. It's honey? At least it wasn't molten glass or deadly acid. Maybe she could even survive for a time on the liquid until another expedition team came to rescue her. Her brief moment of hope is cut short when she realizes that the pipe isn't stopping and that she's already lying in an inch-deep pool of honey. Lon beats on the walls and ceiling as the honey continues to rise around her and screams for help. She tries to plug the pipe with her fingers, but it's no use. Nothing can stop more and more of it from pouring out. The honey continues to rise around her, and all she can do is scream and claw at the pipes that have created her tomb. She presses her lips to the ceiling in an attempt to gain one last breath before the honey completely fills the space. Her final choking gasps are sickly and sweet as the honey fills her lungs. Agent 2 keeps running through the tunnel of pipes. His hand no longer hurts, at least, either from the shock or from the fact that all the nerve endings had been burned away. The horrible sounds coming from the pipes seem to have stopped too. Maybe he really would make it out of this alive. Lon might have found another way out too. There's no telling how many routes through this maze of pipes exist. He would probably exit the building to find her outside waiting for him. Poor Agent 6, though. He never had a chance after opening that cover on the MRV. His thoughts are abruptly interrupted, though, when his foot catches on an unseen pipe and he falls forward onto the floor. Or rather, he should have fallen on the floor. Instead, a pit opens up in the ground, leading to a steep, sloping floor of pipes. He screams and tries to stop himself, but the slick liquid covering everything makes it impossible for him to slow his descent, and he begins to slide down the pipes. His dimming flashlight shows what seemed to be an endless tunnel of pipes stretching down into the dark. The tube of pipes twisted this way and that, slamming him into the walls on either side, tumbling him head over feet. And the descent never seemed to end. He screamed until his voice went hoarse, then gave out entirely. He didn't have any way to mark the passage of time, other than when his flashlight finally started to flicker and then dim, before finally dying. He slid down the endless tunnel of pipes for what felt like days in the darkness, far deeper than they physically should have been able to go. When the friction of the pipes began to tear his skin away, it was almost welcome. At least there would finally be an end. Following the loss of the SCP-015 recovery team, the data on the modular robotic vehicle was deemed non-vital, and no further expeditions were authorized in order to try and recover it. SCP-015 is a mass of pipes, vents, boilers, and other various plumbing apparatuses that have completely filled an otherwise nondescript warehouse located in a major American city. Anytime the warehouse is not being directly observed, the pipes will begin to grow, filling nearly all of the available space in the building, but also trying to connect to other nearby structures through the sewer and other subterranean infrastructure systems. The current best estimate of Foundation researchers is that the building contains over 190 kilometers of pipes, which range from just 2.5 centimeters to over 1 meter in diameter. While some of these pipes will look new, others have the appearance of being rusted or damaged, with many showing signs of leaking. The pipes are made of a strange assortment of materials as well, including bone, wood, steel, pressed ash, human flesh, glass, and granite. Oddly, no pipes composed of lead, PVC plastic, copper, or any other material one would normally expect to be used for the production of pipes have been found. But by far the strangest anomalous quality of SCP-015 is that it appears to react to aggressors. Should the building detect that the personnel inside of it are carrying tools, or if they make any attempt to either damage or repair any of its pipes, they will trigger an immediate reaction. Pipes near the offending subject will often burst, spraying them with a variety of liquids that have included oil, mercury, rats, a species of insect not yet identified, ground glass, seawater, entrails, and molten iron. More and more pipes will continue to burst around the subject until they either retreat from SCP-015 or are killed. SCP-015 was discovered by the Foundation after reports that pipes emanating from a warehouse had mysteriously started to connect to multiple other nearby structures, with no obvious answer for how or why they had suddenly begun emerging from the structure. The pipes were eventually able to be cut back and are now solely within the warehouse once again, but the human cost of containing SCP-015 has been high, and so far, 11 SCP personnel have been killed in their interactions with the anomaly, and an additional 20 are still missing. All of the missing are presumed to also be dead, though there have been reports of banging and screaming coming from within the building that may indicate they are still alive in some form. SCP-015 has been classified as Euclid, and because the building itself is impossible to move, it has been effectively contained on site. The Foundation maintains a gap of at least 2 meters around the warehouse, and no structures are allowed to be built that make contact with the building's outer walls. Should any protrusions from SCP-015 be detected, the pipes are to be immediately capped and sealed. Internal exploration of SCP-015 is permitted with approval from senior staff, but following numerous losses within the site, expedition teams must consist of 3 members, all of whom are equipped with safety lines and GPS tracking. The teams are not allowed to bring any hand or power tools within the building, nor are they to attempt any repairs or maintenance of any kind while inside. There's no need to enforce these rules, though, seeing as SCP-015 appears more than happy to terminate the offenders itself. The SCP Foundation contains many anomalous locations, though SCP-015 may just be one of the strangest.
It's late at night, and you're driving down a desolate stretch of highway somewhere in New Mexico. There's nothing out here except for you, your car, and the road. What you don't know is that you're about to encounter something. Something terrifying. There's no moon, and the sky is pitch black. Your own car is barely lighting up the dark road ahead of you. Just then, you spot something in your rearview mirror. It's a pair of headlights. There's nothing too strange about them, except that they are especially bright. Your eyes are so adjusted to the darkness that you have to look away. When you glance in the mirror again, you see that they're closer. Much closer. They must be going awfully fast. You don't know why, but something about the car behind you makes you feel uneasy. There's something off. You speed up a little. Maybe you can keep some distance from them. But the lights keep getting closer. So you speed up a little more. Still, they gain on you, growing bigger and bigger in your rearview mirror. You're getting nervous. They look like they are barreling right towards you. You floor it. The lights are able to keep up easily, though, and now they're right on your tail. No matter how fast you go, they stay right behind you. The lights are so bright and close that they're almost blinding. You're in a full-blown panic. What is going on? Now the lights are swerving back and forth behind you. What do they want? You take a sharp turn without indicating, but they follow you without difficulty. You keep your foot smashed down on the accelerator. Your engine is screaming, but they just get closer and closer. They're right on your bumper. The bright white lights burn your eyes so bad that you swat at the rearview mirror to point it down. You look up just in time to see the deer standing in the middle of the road. You slam on your brakes as hard as you can. Your tires squeal loudly in the night, and you brace yourself to both hit the deer and get rear-ended from behind. You stop inches from the deer as something incredible happens. The two headlights seem to split, passing by you on either side of your car. You and the deer lock eyes for a split second as if you're both thinking, "What was that?" before the deer hops away into the night. You don't know what's happening, but you're not going to wait around to find out. You throw the car in reverse and hit the gas before whipping it around 180 degrees. You can't remember how far the last town was, but there's no chance you're going in the direction of those lights. You drive as fast as you can, checking your mirror constantly to see if anything is behind you. Nothing. Just darkness. Maybe you're finally safe. No, they're right in front of you. The lights somehow appear out of nowhere right in front of your car. You turn the wheel hard to avoid a head-on collision and you go flying off the road, smashing your head against the window as the car goes flipping and rolling and tumbling. The car comes to a stop 100 feet off the road, upside down, with a lone blinking turn signal dimly lighting up the surrounding field. A single headlight approaches the car, but it's not moving like a vehicle. It's moving like an animal. You're concussed from the accident, and your vision is starting to fade. The last thing you see is a second light approaching. The next morning, the local sheriff is investigating the scene of a single car accident. Curiously, there's no body, just a few scraps of clothing and a pair of tennis shoes sitting neatly in the upside-down roof of the car. Strangest, though, are the childlike handprints all over the dirty car door. The sheriff doesn't know what to think. What the sheriff doesn't know is that he has just come upon the aftermath of an SCP-745 attack, a strange and mysterious creature known as the Headlights. SCP-745 is the classification the SCP Foundation has given to a bipedal, nocturnal predator whose hunting grounds are an abandoned stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745's most distinctive feature by far is its head, the top of which is a bloated sack of translucent skin. There are no visible sensory organs present on the head, nor does it appear to have a solid skull, and the creature's brain can be directly seen through the semi-transparent skin, which is covered in a web of bioluminescent organs. These organs are capable of producing a steady output of light that's been measured between 1400 to 3200 lumens, which is the equivalent of bright xenon gas headlights. The entity has been observed to have the ability to change the color of this light, as well as flash it in specific patterns. It is theorized that it engages in this behavior as a way to defend itself, and potentially may also use it as a way to communicate with other members of its species. The rest of SCP-745's body is covered in skin that is a deep, dark, black color that almost seems to absorb light. This quality, when paired with their blindingly bright head protrusion, gives the appearance of a floating point of light in the darkness. Because SCP-745 entities hunt almost exclusively in pairs, with their preferred hunting grounds being remote sections of highway, they are easily mistaken for oncoming or approaching headlights. Two SCP-745 entities are able to move together in perfect synchronicity, running in tandem at speeds up to 180 kilometers per hour. Together, they will target lone vehicles that they spot on the highway and will begin to chase or run straight towards them, giving the unlucky driver the impression that a fast-moving car is rapidly approaching them. After they near the targeted car, they will attempt to stop it by any means necessary, whether by simply forcing the driver to pull over out of fear or by running them off the road completely. Once their prey has stopped, crashed, or become otherwise incapacitated, the pair will stop moving together and approach the car separately to directly assault and then consume the vehicle's occupants. Next to no remains are left following an attack, save for a few scraps of clothing in the victim's shoes. Other than the damage sustained during the accident, there is never any other sign of struggle or forced entry, with the only other evidence left at the scene being the childlike handprints from SCP-745's small front paws. Strangely, analysis of SCP-745's genetic structure has revealed that unlike humans, they are not a carbon-based life form, meaning it is unlikely then that they are able to derive any nutrition from the consuming of human flesh. It is theorized then that they may be hunting solely for sport or some other form of perverse enjoyment. This question remains unanswered, as currently there are no recorded observations of SCP-745 feeding in the wild, as successful attacks have never left any witnesses, and specimens captured by the SCP Foundation refuse to eat at all. No lairs, nests, or other refuge of SCP-745 has ever been found, nor has the Foundation located any breeding grounds or young examples of the entity. It's unknown how or if they reproduce, or when they may have first appeared. What is known is that they had established a wide hunting territory across the American Southwest until Foundation teams began a program to thin their numbers in the 1960s. The effort appears to have been successful so far, and all recent sightings of SCP-745 have been limited to a specific stretch of highway in northern New Mexico. SCP-745 has been classified as Euclid, and in order to limit potential exposure to civilians, the Foundation has purchased the land surrounding the highway, with traffic being redirected to other roads. Foundation security teams disguised as highway patrol officers are to remove any trespassers or lost travelers who accidentally find themselves on the dangerous stretch of highway. The security teams are also tasked with attempting to capture any instances of SCP-745 that they can, and any recovered creatures, live or dead, are to be loaded into Class 3 BCU storage containers and transferred to Site-17 for further study. Containment procedures that are able to preserve living specimens are still being researched, and currently, no examples of SCP-745 have survived for more than a week in captivity. However, seeing as there have been no new sightings of SCP-745 outside of the isolated and monitored stretch of highway, and all reports of phantom lights elsewhere in the country have not pointed to evidence of additional SCP-745 outbreaks, they are considered to be effectively contained.
As you can clearly see, this completely throws our entire understanding of our place in the universe into complete disarray, says the astronomer as he excitedly makes his case to a panel of aged and supposedly learned advisors. My observations leave no doubt that everything we previously suspected to be the absolute truth is wrong. The panel of advisors murmur and lean close together to whisper to each other. The astronomer can't hear what they are saying, but the passion and joy that he felt as he explained his findings to the room is quickly draining from his face. He can see the men mouthing the words "no" and "lies" as they make disapproving gestures. But how could this be? Had they not understood what he was showing them? Maybe he didn't explain things in a way that they could comprehend. Here he was, the greatest scientist of his day, presenting hard facts, backed up by rigorous observations, and this was their reaction. The group of advisors finish conferring and grow quiet. The chief advisor clears his throat, and everyone in the room waits for him to speak. Royal Scientist, this panel has examined your findings and listened to your theories. The advisor can't help but sneer at the word, and has decided that the ideas you present are not only incorrect, but dangerous. The astronomer can't believe what he's hearing. This panel, acting under the authority of the king, has charged you with the crime of heresy. The astronomer is shocked. He steps towards the panel to plead with them, but he's stopped by a pair of guards who grab him by the arms. Stop! Stop! I'm a man of science. I only presented you with the truth. But no one seems moved by his appeals. The panel watches as the astronomer is dragged from the room, kicking and fighting, still insisting on his innocence. The screams echo through the dungeon as the torturer cranks another notch on the rack, stretching the astronomer's body just a little bit more. He has no idea how long this has been going on. Hours, days. The pain has been excruciating and without end. He closes his eyes, trying to escape the torture by retreating into his mind, but he's slapped on the face and brought back to the reality of his situation. Standing in front of him is the chief advisor, the same one who sentenced him to this inhumane treatment. You can end this any time you like. Simply recant your statements and admit you were mistaken, and all of this will be over. The astronomer is unsure if by over he means that they will release him or simply kill him to put him out of his misery. But it didn't matter which the right answer was. He couldn't lie. The astronomer knew the truth.
and no amount of pain, no matter how intense or how long they submitted him to it, would change what he now knew. Disappointed with the astronomer's steadfastness, the advisor signals to the torturer, who cranks the rack again, stretching the astronomer's body to the point where he feels like his bones might pop out of their sockets. "Recant!" the advisor screams, repeating the word over and over, growing louder as the astronomer's own cries increase from the pain caused by the torturer cranking the rack more and more. The astronomer closes his eyes again. He's certain this will be the end of him soon, and that he will die with the great secret he's learned without getting the chance to share it with the world. But suddenly, the astronomer notices that the room has gone quiet. The advisor is no longer yelling, and the torturer has stopped operating the machine. The astronomer opens his eyes to see the advisor and the torturer both in a deep bow. His gaze continues up and he sees the king himself standing in front of him. The king stares at the astronomer for what feels like an eternity before simply asking, "Is it true?" The astronomer, limbs still stretched on the rack, manages a nod, and with his remaining strength whispers, "It's true." The king motions with his hand to the torturer, who stands up and begins releasing the astronomer from his constraints. The advisor protests, "But my lord, this man—" But he's cut off by the king with a stern look and retreats back into his deep bow. "Show me," the king says, as the astronomer stands, rubbing his sore shoulders where the tendons and muscles were stretched far beyond their natural limits. The astronomer opens the door to his laboratory and gestures for the king to enter. The room is a mess of papers and scientific equipment, a reflection of the busy and scattered mind of the man who works here. The king is immediately drawn to a table with a large scroll. He spreads it across the table and examines it, but his face betrays no hint of what he is thinking. "Is this what you showed my advisors?" The astronomer nods yes. "Would you like to see for yourself?" The astronomer motions to the window, where a brass tube is attached to a tripod. The king approaches the device, but doesn't know how it works. The astronomer demonstrates by looking through the eyepiece. He moves it slightly, making small adjustments to make sure it is just right for the king. "There, now look." The king bends over to peer through the telescope, and a look of shock comes over his face. What he sees is the most incredible thing he has ever witnessed. There, far above up in the sky, unable to be seen by the naked eye, is a man, and he is staring back at him. The planet that this played out on was not Earth, but a bizarre place that is one of the strangest anomalies in the entire SCP Foundation archive. This is SCP-007, also known as Abdominal Planet. SCP-007 is a spherical object located in the abdomen of a young man, or rather in the space where his abdomen should be, since most of the muscle, skin, and organs that should be present simply are not. The subject, a Caucasian male in his mid-20s of average height and build, does not appear affected by the large missing portion of his body, and has not reported experiencing pain or discomfort of any kind. In the space where his abdominal muscles and organs should be is a small globe composed of soil and water. This sphere, which measures roughly 60 centimeters in diameter, resembles the planet Earth, though the arrangement of the continents does not match any known configuration from our own planet's history. The tiny planet has its own weather patterns, and even a small, but still detectable, gravitational pull. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of SCP-007 is that it appears to be inhabited. Microscopic organisms that would correspond to roughly the scale of human beings on Earth have been observed on the surface of the planet. So far, 2 distinct intelligent species have been identified, both of whom seem to possess a technological level similar to the 15th century on Earth. It is unknown if the inhabitants of the Abdominal Planet are aware of the world outside of their planet, and communication attempts with the planet's occupants have been placed on hold by senior Foundation officials, pending further study into what effect an exchange may have on them or us. The human subject within which SCP-007 is located provided the Foundation with a name that he claims to be his, but no records of such a person existing have yet to be located. Upon being questioned about the lack of records, he willfully offered both a social security and driver's license number, but when they were checked against current records, neither had yet to be assigned by the US government. And the mysteries surrounding this man don't stop there. The subject has not shown the need for either food or water, and it is unknown what energy source his body continues to operate on without nutrition. He is capable of both eating and drinking, though, despite the large missing section of his stomach. But it is still not known what happens to the substances after he swallows them. The man has above-average intelligence and scored a 128 on an administered IQ test. He also generally appears friendly and amiable, and expresses only a passing curiosity about the planet located within his abdomen and how it came to be there. When asked about the origins of the planet, he replied very matter-of-factly that, "I just woke up one day and there it was. I don't have any idea how it got there." Due to the poorly understood nature of SCP-007, it has been classified as Euclid, and the small planet and the man it resides in are contained in a sealed, comfortably furnished 10 by 10 meter room that the subject is not allowed to leave. The subject is to be monitored closely by Foundation staff and has a weekly chess game with one of the attending doctors, which also serves as an opportunity to evaluate his mental health. So far, he has not shown any signs of mental illness or violent tendencies, and seems to be quite content. In general, he appears happy with his restricted living situation inside the Foundation facility and has made no attempts to escape. The subject has made multiple requests for access to a computer with an internet connection, but due to potential security risks, this request has thus far been denied.
A young man is in the middle of one of his regular night jogs through the park. He loves running through this park at night. It's dark, the air is cool, and the sounds of the city that surround the park disappear, offering peace, quiet, and a small reprieve from the busy world. He jogs along a path that winds through the park and starts upon a section that is surrounded on both sides by tall trees. He follows the path around a sharp bend and is stopped in his tracks. Standing there, in the middle of the track, is a figure. It has its back to him and isn't moving. He's tall and so uniformly black that he almost disappears into the night. Whoever or whatever this is, he's scared of it. But the creature doesn't move, and neither does he. He's frozen, unsure of what to do, when the creature suddenly turns his head towards him, revealing a pair of bright, glowing eyes. The runner is so terrified he can't even scream. He falls and crawls backwards in the dirt, trying to get away from the creature. The creature turns its body towards him and begins stepping forward. The runner scrambles to his feet and runs. He's sprinting as hard and as fast as he can, adrenaline pumping, heart pounding, trying to put as much distance as he can between himself and that thing. His muscles burn, his lungs ache, but he can't stop. Finally, he's back at his house. He bursts through the door, locking and bolting it behind him. His girlfriend is reading on the couch and doesn't understand what's going on. After struggling to catch his breath, he tries to explain what he saw on the path, but his girlfriend just laughs. A giant man with glowing eyes? He was just seeing things in the dark. It was probably a dog, nothing that would justify the panic he was now in. The next day, he's left wondering if he really was mistaken. Those piercing, glowing eyes are burned into his mind, though. Maybe his girlfriend was right, and it really was just a dog. Yes, that must be it. His mind was just playing tricks on him in the dark. Even so, he's going to stick to running inside, at least for a little while. But he soon finds that he's having a hard time. He notices that he's running out of breath much quicker than normal. Is he coming down with something? He doesn't feel sick, but then why is he suddenly so weak? 2 weeks have passed since he saw something in the park. No one he brought it up to, not his friends, not his co-workers, have ever heard of such a thing, and no one seemed like they believed him either. At this point, he is feeling sure that he really did imagine it, but he can't get that image of whatever it was out of his head. He can't keep running on a treadmill forever, though. He misses his night runs. It's time to get over his fear. He's running through the park again, enjoying the silence and the light breeze on his skin. He continues down the path, acutely aware that he's getting closer and closer to the spot where he saw that thing before. He can't stop, though. He has to prove to everyone that he's not afraid. He has to prove it to himself. He reaches the part of the path that runs through the tall trees. Just like before, the sounds of the city melt away, the only sound coming from his steady, heavy breathing. He follows the winding path and feels his heart starting to race, but he has to keep going. He rounds the same corner, and nothing is there. He slows to a stop. Of course nothing is here. Nothing ever was. He really did imagine it. Or did he? Buongiorno. Today's file comes from the Italian branch of the SCP Foundation, SCP-015-IT, also known as the Boogeyman. SCP-015-IT is a humanoid entity that stands just under 2 meters tall. Its body is devoid of any hair, and its dark, black skin absorbs 98% of all light, making it virtually invisible in low light. Its head lacks a nose or ears, but these missing features are hardly noticed, because if you see 015-IT, its eyes are what demand all of your attention. While the Boogeyman's skin is completely black, its eyes contain light-producing organs on the irises, causing them to glow in the dark, like a deep-sea predator. Its mouth contains 8 pointed teeth on both the upper and lower jaws, and a long 28-centimeter forked tongue. The 2 tips of its tongue each have a hollow needle-like organ that leads straight into its esophagus. More on what it does with that specialized biological feature soon. Physically, SCP-015-IT is rather slight, but it is surprisingly strong and easily able to overpower an adult human. Its skinny arms are much longer than an average human's, and each of its 4 fingers ends in a razor-sharp claw. It has also been shown to be quite resistant to physical injuries and possesses the ability to heal wounds and damage to internal organs at a hyper-accelerated rate. SCP-015-IT is primarily active at night, which is unsurprising given its skin's natural camouflage in the dark. The Boogeyman hunts mammals, with humans being its preferred prey, but it does not feed on flesh. Instead, SCP-015-IT draws its sustenance from the adrenaline and noradrenaline produced by its quarry. Adrenaline and noradrenaline are chemicals the body produces to increase heart rate, blood flow, and provide more energy to the muscles in moments of stress, or in the case of SCP-015-IT, extreme fear. And it has developed a hunting method to cause this exact reaction in humans. 015-IT will usually hide in dark spots, trying to keep out of sight as much as possible as it stalks its next victim. If it has been able to remain unseen, it will wait for a moment when its prey has become distracted so it can silently approach them. Once close enough, it will leap towards its unaware victim, grab them, and quickly bite them on the side of the torso, near where the adrenal gland is located. It uses its large teeth to anchor its mouth in place, as it uses the needles on its forked tongue to probe into their body. With one needle, it pierces directly into the adrenal gland and begins draining the blood that is now rich with fear-induced adrenaline. At the exact same time, the other needle releases a mild sedative, allowing 015-IT to feed and then depart without risk, as the victim remains immobile. Another anomalous effect occurs when someone is unlucky enough to actually see the Boogeyman. Roughly 2 weeks after observing the creature, the person who saw it will begin experiencing various detrimental mental effects, including hallucinations and panic attacks. Some will also begin to experience physical issues, most often damage to the cardiovascular system. It is unknown why exactly these mental and physical effects occur, but it is theorized that SCP-015-IT may use it as a way to weaken certain prey that it considers too strong or potentially dangerous. In 2011, the Boogeyman was actually contained, but not by the SCP Foundation. The Brotherhood of St. George's Knights is a secret order in the Catholic Church that was created by the Pope in the year 453 to either contain or eliminate all anomalies, and it was this group that first captured SCP-015-IT, which they designated as Dia 212, in line with their own classification system. While it was in their containment, they made a number of discoveries about the creature that they labeled as a shadow demon. First, they found that while it feeds on the fear of its victims by ingesting their blood, it doesn't actually require this to survive. Dia 212, as they call it, is an unstable entity, and feeding allows it to maintain its physical shape in our reality. In addition to its impressive physical strength, the Boogeyman is also quite intelligent, as seen by its ability to successfully hunt, attack, and escape from humans. Strangely, it also appears to be resistant to weapons which have been blessed, causing only a fraction of the physical damage that they should when compared to a similar, non-holy version. During the course of research into the creature, Father Ilardi, a member of the Brotherhood of St. George's Knights, wrote that despite the creature being repugnant beyond every limit, he believed that it had a gentle soul, and that its screams are similar to a pained cry. He postulated that SCP-015-IT may have even once been a human before some dark force transformed it into the monster that it had become. He decided that it was his mission to find a way to communicate with the creature, and one day bring it back into the light and love of his god. Father Ilardi was making good progress with the creature, and it seemed like it was even growing fond of him and his disciples. But his advances were halted when they were attacked by a group of soldiers from the Fascist Council of the Occult, a terrorist group that seeks to use anomalies as weapons in their quest to disrupt the social order. In the attack, several of the Brotherhood were killed, and in the commotion, SCP-015-IT escaped. Following this, reports soon began to come from the province of Caserta that described what sounded like vampire attacks. A mobile task force was sent to the area, and while 015-IT was initially able to make use of its various physical abilities to evade and escape capture, it was eventually shot with a transmitter that allowed it to be tracked. The Italian mobile task force was able to surround the creature, but fearing being contained again, it responded with a level of violence that it had not been thought capable of. Several members of the task force were killed in the line of duty before the Boogeyman could finally be subdued. Today, SCP-015-IT is contained at Site Vittoria in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy. Since this anomaly is both sentient and highly unpredictable in its behavior, it has been classified as Euclid. It is kept in a standard humanoid entity containment cell and is monitored by video cameras and infrared sensors at all times. Due to the light-absorbing properties of its skin, its cell and the adjacent corridors are painted white and are to be kept well lit at all times. Twice a day, SCP-015-IT is given a normal domestic pig that it is allowed to feed on. Any personnel assigned to 015-IT duty must undergo a psychological assessment on a weekly basis, and, regardless of the results, must be cycled out after 3 months of exposure to the Boogeyman.
The house is small, but cozy. When the realtor showed it to her, she couldn't help but notice all the flaws: the chipped paint on the doorframe, the missing shingles on the roof, the cracks along the kitchen walls, even the dented old mailbox out front. But even with all those imperfections, she can't help but feel this little house is calling to her. It's where she's meant to be. This will be a home for her. The woman knows, deep in her heart, that this is what she needs to start over. It's not easy. As she moves her things into the new house, she can't help but think about her failed relationship. Every piece of furniture, every knick-knack, reminds her of her old girlfriend. She unloads a heavy box from the back of her car, but she trips over the curb as she turns toward the house. She falls, and the contents of the box spill all over the sidewalk. They're old photo albums. She quickly shoves them back into the box, doing her best to avoid looking at them. But one photo, an old vacation snapshot of her and her girlfriend visiting Niagara Falls, catches her eye as it falls out of an album. She bites her lip and wills herself not to tear up as she pushes it back into the box. How can two people who were once so close grow so far apart? The rest of the day passes in a haze. There's lots to do, what with arranging the furniture and calling up all the utilities. By the end of the day, she's exhausted and thankful to fall into bed. As she gradually drifts off to sleep, she muses on her situation. Today was the hardest day, she tells herself. Every day is only going to get easier from here on out. Time heals all wounds. The next day, she rises early. The sun is shining, birds are chirping. As she walks into her new kitchen to brew a pot of coffee, she's overcome with a sudden surge of good feelings. This house has so much potential. She could learn to live here. She could find a new love here. The world is her oyster, and she's ready for anything. Yes, she tells herself, all I needed was a good night's sleep. Now, she feels totally revitalized. A little while later, she hears the mail truck arrive and depart. Looking out the window, she sees that the delivery person has shoved the little aluminum flag into the upright position, indicating that she has mail. She ties her bathrobe around her waist and, still cradling a mug of steaming coffee in her hands, walks to that battered black mailbox at the end of the walkway. That's the first thing that ought to go, she mumbles to herself as she imagines all her plans to redecorate the house. Maybe she'll get one of those fun mailboxes that come in the shape of a wacky animal or a birdhouse. Something different, something eye-catching. Her old girlfriend never let her do anything fun. She pulls open the mailbox and pulls out a stack of envelopes. Still thinking about the possibilities for a new mailbox, she quickly shuffles through the letters, scanning the return addresses with little interest. It's mostly junk mail. That's no surprise. She just moved in, so most of her friends don't know her new address yet. But there's one letter at the bottom of the pile that has no return address. That's weird, she says. It's probably just more junk mail. She knows that some advertisers don't leave return addresses as a way to pique a recipient's interest and trick them into reading their sales pitches. Nevertheless, she's intrigued enough to tear it open. To her surprise, inside is a handwritten letter. "Hello," says the letter. "I couldn't help but notice you today. I'm really excited to see a new face in the neighborhood. I hope you enjoy your stay here. Maybe we could meet later? See ya." The woman blinks in confusion. This must be a welcome letter from one of her new neighbors, but since it's not signed, she really has no way of knowing which one. It's a little odd, but, well, she's sure that the letter writer must have had good intentions. She pushes the red aluminum flag back into its reclining position, folds the mysterious letter under her arm with her other mail, and retreats back into her new house. Imagine her surprise when, the next day, she finds another letter in her mailbox. "Hi again," it says. "I saw that you read my letter yesterday. I'm so glad. I was afraid that you wouldn't like me, but now I see that we're going to be great friends. Maybe you'd like to get coffee together sometime? XOXO. P.S. I really like you." Okay, now this is getting a little pushy. That first letter was friendly, if a little awkward, but this one almost sounds like someone is trying to solicit her for a date. She's in no mood for that. Even if she wasn't still hurting from her breakup, she didn't know this mysterious letter writer. Where did they get the nerve to ask her out? Angrily, she crumples up the new letter and throws it directly into the trash. She looks across the hedge, peering into the neighbors' yards. In the yard to her left, a middle-aged man pushes a lawnmower across the grass. In the yard to her right, two old women are gossiping at the fence. She feels suddenly exposed as she realizes that the letters could be coming from anyone in the neighborhood. She hopes that maybe if she ignores it, the message will be clear. She quickly scurries back into her house and slams the door shut. The next morning, she finds another message from her secret admirer together with her other mail. The tone of the letter is more desperate, more wheedling. "I saw you throw away my letter yesterday," it says. "Why did you do that? Don't you like me? I really thought we would make a great couple. Maybe if you gave me a chance, I could make you so much happier than your ex." The woman doesn't read any farther. She throws the letter to the ground. This is going too far. It was bad enough that a stranger was hitting on her, but now she knows that her secret admirer is a stalker too. How else would they know that she threw away their previous letter unless they were watching her as she picked up her mail? And, even more disturbing, how could they possibly know that she had troubles with her ex? She stalks over to the house next door and pounds on the door. When the middle-aged man answers, she confronts him with a letter. "Did you write this? What's your problem?" she demands as she shoves the paper in his face. "I don't know what you're trying to do, but I'm not interested. I want you to keep away from me." "I don't know what you're talking about," protests the man, holding up his hands in surrender. I didn't write anything." The woman doesn't know if she believes him, but she has to admit that the middle-aged man sounds genuinely confused by her accusations. Maybe he's not the culprit. But when she confronts the neighbor living to the other side, she hears a similar story. "Are you sending me these letters because they're actually really creepy? I don't like people watching me," says the woman as she confronts her other neighbor. The old woman just shakes her head. "Mercy me, I didn't send you a letter. Why would I do that? I could just come over and talk to you. I don't know why you youngsters are always making up stories about weird letters." The young woman wonders about the old woman's final words when she's eating dinner alone in her kitchen later that night. The way that she complained about young people always making up stories about weird letters makes her wonder if this has happened before. Could it be that other young women have lived in this house before her? And were they victims of the same stalker? But who could this stalker be? It's got to be someone close. She can just feel it. At that moment, she looks up from her meal and gasps in surprise. There, right outside her window, is the black mailbox. It's hovering right at the edge of the window, as if it's shyly peeking in, like a bashful caller afraid of being seen. The young woman blinks and rubs her eyes. When she looks again, the mailbox is gone. She rushes to the door and throws it open. The mailbox is right there, standing at the curb at the end of the footpath, just as it's always been. Are her eyes playing tricks on her? Is the stress of her breakup and the mysterious stalker finally getting to her? The next day, she finds another letter. Her stalker is getting even more unhinged, and the messages are becoming downright crazy. The next day, she finds not just one letter in her mailbox, but two. Both messages sound absolutely deranged. Her stalker, and at this point there's no doubt in her mind that a stalker is responsible for these letters, has resorted to threats. "Why don't you like me? You better change your attitude if you know what's good for you. You think you're too good for me? What does your ex have that I don't? Maybe you need a real man to really show you the ropes. She crushes the letters in her hands, her face flushing with a combination of fear and rage. Who does this person think that they are? She can't take this pressure much longer. She's ready to report these letters to the police, but she still has no idea who's stalking her. Or does she? She can't help but think about that strange incident the previous night, when she thought that she saw the mailbox standing right outside the window. But that's crazy, isn't it? Her mailbox can't be stalking her, can it? If she tries to tell anyone that her mailbox is sending her threatening messages, everyone is just going to think that she's crazy. But soon, things start to get worse, escalating in ways that force the woman to confront that possibility. That night, she's in her kitchen fixing dinner. She turns from the stove to grab some condiments from the pantry. That's when she sees it. The mailbox. It's not outside this time, it's in the next room. It's standing partially hidden behind the door, again as if it's trying not to be seen. She drops her work and rushes out into the living room, hoping to catch the mailbox in the act. But it's gone. She runs to the window and, once again, sees the mailbox standing at the end of the walkway in the exact same spot that it should be. She's certain that she can't be imagining these things, but at the same time, what other explanation could there be? She barely gets any sleep that night, tossing and turning with unpleasant dreams. Several times she startles awake, sitting bolt upright in bed, half convinced that the sinister mailbox might even be in the same room with her, watching her as she sleeps. The next day, the exhausted woman rises early from restless dreams and sits on the front porch, waiting for the mail truck to arrive. When the familiar U.S. Postal Service vehicle pulls up to the curb, she stalks over and confronts the mailman. "Come on, hand it over," she demands. "It's my mail, give it to me." She's too flustered by this whole absurd scenario to bother being polite, and the mailman is in no mood to argue. This woman looks positively insane, he thinks. Her hair is disheveled, her eyes are ringed with heavy black circles, and she looks like she hasn't had a decent night's sleep in weeks. He has to deal with all kinds of crazy customers every day, and he knows better than to push his luck. He shoves the bundle of letters into her arms and jumps back into his truck. The woman quickly shuffles through the stack of letters, scanning the return addresses and throwing each envelope to the ground behind her when she's satisfied that it's not from her stalker. Just as she thought, none of these letters match the description of the blank envelopes that her stalker uses for his messages. She pulls open the mailbox and looks inside. To her horror, there's already a letter inside. She grabs it and feels the blood drain from her face as she looks at the blank envelope. It's another message from her stalker. Now she knows that he's sending the letters through the mail, but how did he get this letter into the mailbox without her seeing him? She woke up so early this morning, even before the sun was up, and she's been watching the mailbox for hours. It doesn't make sense that any of her neighbors could have planted this message without her knowing, but the only other possible explanation is that the mailbox itself is somehow writing these letters. She stares at the black aluminum box, the dark, dented metal suddenly taking on a sinister aspect in the early morning sunlight. Maybe she really is going insane. Maybe she just misses her ex-girlfriend so much that she's imagining all this madness and just projecting her fear of being alone onto this mailbox. No, she doesn't believe that at all. She's going to put a stop to this, once and for all. The woman jogs into her garage and returns several moments later with a shovel. She doesn't know whether she's hallucinating or not, but she's had just about enough of this stupid mailbox. She wants it out of her life. Even if it's not stalking her, even if this is all in her mind, it's clear that there's something off about this mailbox, something that's putting her ill at ease. She starts to shovel dirt away from the base of the mailbox post, grunting and sweating with the exertion of her work, but not stopping until the post is loose. She grabs at the thick wooden post and hoists the mailbox, post and all, out of its pit. She drags it across the lawn to her driveway, where, with considerable effort, she manages to shove it into the back seat of her car, ripping the upholstery of the seats and spilling wet dirt all over the floor. She doesn't care about the damage to her car. She just needs to get rid of this mailbox. A chill runs down her spine at the thought of taking a long car ride with that thing behind her. She doesn't trust it at all, and the idea of turning her back on it, well, she doesn't know what kind of danger she'll be in. As she climbs into the driver's seat, she adjusts the rearview mirror so that she can keep an eye on the mailbox for the whole trip. To her immense relief, it doesn't move once on the whole car ride, even though her nervous eyes keep flicking to the rearview mirror to assuage her fears. She finally arrives at her destination, the city dump. She pulls up to the front gate and honks her horn until the custodian comes out of the guardhouse. She motions for him to remove the mailbox from her back seat, and the panicked expression on her face tells him that he should be quick about it. He's barely pulled the mailbox clear the door when the woman peels away, skidding along the curb and gunning the engine to drive away from the dump and the abandoned mailbox as fast as possible. After a few minutes on the road, she starts to calm down. She breathes a deep sigh of relief, a new sense of calm finally settling over her now that she's removed that awful mailbox from her life. She adjusts the rearview mirror to look at her reflection, wincing at the sight of her haggard eyes and blotchy skin. The stress of the last few days must have been really getting to her, but now she feels like she can finally move on with her life. She manages a tense chuckle at the memory. The whole idea that her mailbox was stalking her seems increasingly absurd the further she drives from the dump, but she can't help but feel much better. But when she turns the corner to arrive at her home street, she sees something that she cannot believe. Her eyes bulge from her head, and her fingers tighten around the steering wheel, her knuckles going white. It can't be. The mailbox is back. The same black aluminum box and wooden post. Of course, after all she's been through, she would recognize it anywhere. It's still there, in her front yard, at the end of the walkway. But she's certain that she just dropped it off the dump, right? There's no way that she could have imagined digging up the mailbox and lugging it all the way to the junkyard. Could it be possible that the mailbox somehow followed her home? Could it be that desperate for her attention and companionship? The woman doesn't say a word. She keeps driving, passing her new home without stopping. She can't deal with this anymore. She glances at the rearview mirror, one last look at the cozy little house where she thought that she could start a new life. But she can't live like this. She keeps driving, and she doesn't look back. On the corner, the mailbox stands still and silent, as if it had never moved and never will. Dealing with a stalker can be a frightening and dangerous situation, but it can be even worse when your stalker isn't even human. That woman never had to see the mailbox again after she left the property, but the SCP Foundation is very familiar with this dangerously obsessive romantic, which it calls SCP-1269. SCP-1269 looks like a perfectly ordinary mailbox situated in front of a perfectly ordinary house somewhere in Massachusetts. It is made of black aluminum, possessing a red flag and a white plastic post. It stands at 1/3 of a meter tall, and the house number of the corresponding property is printed on its side. It is unknown how long SCP-1269 has resided at the property, although dents and bruises on the mailbox chassis indicate that it's probably been there for some time. SCP-1269 remains a perfectly ordinary mailbox when its corresponding house is unoccupied or else occupied by a male resident. But when a woman aged 23 years old or older takes up residence on the property, SCP-1269 will start to manifest its anomalous properties. About 2 weeks after the woman moves into the house, SCP-1269 will start to manifest unaddressed romantic letters targeted towards the resident of the house. Surveillance within SCP-1269 has shown that the letters manifest approximately 3 seconds after mail delivery. SCP-1269's anomalous properties will manifest only when a single female, 23 years or older, hereafter referred to as the occupant, resides within the same property as SCP-1269. Approximately 2 weeks after the occupant moves in, SCP-1269 will start to manifest unaddressed letters every 4 days. The contents of the letter are romantic in nature and are targeted towards the occupant of the house. Surveillance within SCP-1269 has shown the letters manifest approximately 3 seconds after the occupant's mail has been delivered. At first, letters will manifest once every 4 days, but SCP-1269 will quickly escalate its obsessive behavior to the point that multiple letters will appear daily. The letters will become more obsessive and less coherent as SCP-1269's stalking behavior intensifies. When not under direct supervision of the house occupant, SCP-1269 will teleport to a location near the occupant and face them as if it's trying to watch them. It will always manifest in an area where it is partially obstructed, such as peeking through a window or behind some shower curtains. Sometimes, when the resident is asleep, SCP-1269 will teleport near the occupant without obstruction. SCP-1269 will not follow the occupant off the property, and all anomalous properties will cease manifesting if the occupant moves out of the house. Attempts to remove SCP-1269 from its location have so far been unsuccessful. SCP-1269 will teleport to its original curbside location after 1 hour of relocation. If attempts are made to replace SCP-1269 with a new mailbox, The mailbox will be teleported away with SCP-1269 appearing in its place. Approximately 3 hours after the disappearance of the new mailbox, it will reappear in a dumpster several kilometers away. Mailboxes recovered so far have all been found in varying amounts of disrepair, within garbage bags and covered in obscene graffiti, as if SCP-1269 has become violently jealous of any other mailbox it sees as trying to replace it. SCP-1269 has also shown similar violent jealousy toward humans that it might believe are vying for the affection of any woman living in its house. In a recent experiment, a D-Class male was moved onto the property with the then-current test occupant, a D-Class female, after 7 weeks of residence. Interestingly, SCP-1269 ceased its teleporting activity in response to this male presence, but 3 days later, the D-Class male disappeared from the property, causing SCP-1269 to resume all anomalous behavior. 2 weeks later, the body of the missing D-Class male was discovered in the same dumpster where SCP-1269 had previously disposed of rival mailboxes. The property where SCP-1269 is located is to remain under the custody of the Foundation, with one male researcher residing in the house to monitor the behavior of SCP-1269. Because of the dangerous lengths to which it will go to attain the current object of its affection, SCP-1269 has been designated with Object Class Euclid. It's our job to make sure it doesn't menace anyone else.
A storm rages outside of the little old house, as inside, a little old woman bounces a little baby on her little old knee. The baby coos and laughs as the old woman makes funny faces and noises for the child, trying to keep it entertained as they wait for his parents to return from their much-needed night out by themselves. The old woman herself needs a rest now, though. She's forgotten how exhausting it can be to watch a child. "Okay, that's enough. It's time for both of us to take a little nap before your parents get back." She gets up and takes the baby into a nearby room that looks as though it was a nursery at one time, but it hasn't been used for many years. As she goes to set the child into the crib, a strong gust of wind blows through the room. She places the baby down and rushes to the window and closes it shut. It must have been left cracked open by mistake. Brr, the room is cold from the wind, but she has just the thing to fix that. She moves to a small closet and opens the creaky door. The little old woman strains to reach up to the top shelf and feels around. Ah, there it is. She pulls down a baby blanket, a soft baby blue with colorful animals printed on it. It looks as though it's been up there for a long time, and she gives it a good shake before walking back to the crib. "Look what we have here. It's your daddy's own blankie." She gives it another shake. "There we go, good as new." She leans into the crib and wraps the small helpless child in the blanket before giving him a gentle kiss on the forehead. "Now you get some sleep. Your mommy and daddy will be back before you know it, and we want to show them what a good babysitter Grammie is, don't we? That way I get to see you all the time." The little old woman switches off the light and exits the room, leaving the door cracked just a few inches. She heads back to the couch and plops down on it. Almost as soon as she does, though, the baby starts crying. With a sigh, she gets back up and goes back to the nursery. "What's the matter, little dear?" she says as she turns the lights on. "Oh no!" She rushes to the crib. "You've kicked your blanket off. You must be freezing." She grabs the blanket from the end of the crib and tucks it around the baby once again. "There you go, that's better." The old woman leaves the room and quietly closes the door shut, leaving it open just a few inches. The moment she turns around to go back to the couch, though, the crying starts again. With a sigh, she opens the door and goes back into the room. Once again, the blanket is stuffed at the end of the crib where the baby has kicked it off. "Fine, don't want a blanket? That's fine." She picks the baby up out of the crib and rocks him in her arms until it stops crying. She sets him back in the crib. "There you go. No blankets, just please get some sleep. Grammie's tired." The old woman takes the blanket out of the crib and leaves the room. She closes the door most of the way and, incredibly, this time the child remains silent. The old woman resumes her place on the couch and starts to yawn. Just as she does, the wind outside picks up and howls loudly. The old woman shivers. She looks next to her and spots the baby blanket. She picks it up and examines the cute animal print, remembering when her own son was a baby wrapped in it. She smiles at the happy thought and throws the blanket around her shoulders. She leans back on the couch and finds that her eyes are growing very heavy. She'll rest them for just a moment. She won't fall asleep. She'll just rest. "Mom, it's us. We're back. Thanks again for..."
The couple both scream when they enter the house to find that the old woman is lying face down on the floor in a pool of blood. The source of the blood is obvious. Chunks of flesh from her shoulders and upper back have been torn out, leaving jagged holes, as if she were mauled by an animal. As the man runs to the old woman, trying to do anything he can to help her, the woman runs to the nursery to find that the baby is sleeping peacefully in his crib. The woman picks up the child, tears streaming down her cheeks, and returns to the living room to see her husband kneeling beside his dead mother. Both the husband and wife are so shocked by what they have found that neither notices the baby blanket lying on the couch, or that the cruel, blood-covered mouth on it is slowly fading from view until it disappears completely. There is little in life that is more comforting than a favorite blanket. Perhaps you've had the same one since you were a child, or you have a heavy one that you like to wrap yourself in when you're feeling down, or maybe it's just one that's especially fluffy and warm that you'd do anything to keep. Today's Anomaly plays on those very feelings, using them against its victims to become one of the more insidious predatory anomalies in the SCP Foundation archives. This is SCP-799, also known as the Carnivorous Blanket. SCP-799 is a type of creature that can vary in shape, size, and appearance, but, as the name implies, always takes the form of a blanket of some kind. The exact material the anomaly is made out of is unknown, but it is a very soft fiber that in many ways resembles a high-quality merino wool blend, though one that retains heat even more effectively than its natural counterpart. SCP-799's weight can vary from between half a kilogram all the way to 6 kilograms, and while examples have been found in nearly every color imaginable, it seems predisposed towards pastels and will frequently have patterns featuring stylized, friendly depictions of various animals. Both the pastel colors and the childish patterns are especially common in instances of SCP-799 that weigh less than 2 kilograms and would colloquially be known as baby blankets. While SCP-799 is undoubtedly a living organism, there is some debate as to whether it is itself an animal or perhaps a type of fungal colony. Instances of 799 are incapable of locomotion, lying motionless for long periods of time, and require little in the way of nutrition. What small amount they do need, they appear to be able to gain almost entirely from the organic particles present in normal household dust, such as animal dander and dead human skin cells. The blanket feeds via a series of minute, filter-feeding mouth-like structures that are spread across the surface of the creature, which wait for nutrients to fall into them, not unlike a sponge on the ocean floor. Instances of SCP-799 can survive for quite a while in this state, and one specimen was noted as having lived for multiple years in a damp attic, subsisting entirely on the small organic particles that would drift down from the rafters above. Should an instance of SCP-799 be forced to go for long periods of time without a source of nutrition, though, like when, for example, it is placed inside of a sealed closet or drawer, it will begin to undergo certain physical changes, which result in it metamorphosing into its predatory form. These changes aren't noticeable from only casual observation and consist of the blanket converting its many filter-feeding mouths into a single, large one that is lined with multiple rows of extremely sharp teeth. The blanket creature also develops a new form of tissue inside its cloth-like structure, one that is similar to muscle and capable of contracting and squeezing. Once its metamorphosis is complete, the instance of SCP-799 will lie in wait for an unsuspecting creature to cover themselves with it or wrap it around their body. Once they do, the blanket will bide its time until they enter a state of rest, usually waiting for them to fall asleep entirely, at which point its feeding phase will begin. Once the creature has detected that its victim is dormant, it will use its newly formed muscle to latch onto them, holding them in place as it opens its tooth-lined maw. It will begin to bite at its confined prey, tearing off several kilograms of flesh, bone, and any other organic material it can, swallowing it, and converting it into a thin slurry that it spreads through its body almost immediately. This traumatic, violent process nearly always leads to the victim dying of blood loss. Within 10 minutes of the attack, the mouth on SCP-799 will have been completely reabsorbed, leaving no signs that it is anything other than a normal, everyday blanket, though one which now mysteriously weighs several kilograms more than it did before. By 40 minutes after the attack, the entire digestive system within SCP-799 will have demetamorphosed back into its original form, with a single digestive tract being changed once again to the many dispersed filter-feeding mouths. While SCP-799 is more than happy to feed on any warm-blooded animal, including humans, it shows no interest in cold-blooded ones or inanimate objects. It appears then that its senses may be limited to only touch and heat, using those as signs that it is now wrapped around a potential meal. Adding to the strangeness of SCP-799 is that it reproduces through budding, like flatworms and corals. When it has absorbed enough nutrients and sufficiently increased its mass, either very slowly through filter feeding or rapidly via its carnivorous phase, it will begin to take on a quilt-like appearance. Over several weeks, one of the quilt squares will puff up and slide off the blanket. This new, smaller instance will resemble a doily or a throw pillow, until it too begins to feed and grow. The new instance is a perfect clone of its parent, identical in every way, and it will eventually grow to a similar size and begin its own reproductive cycle. It is unknown exactly how long it takes SCP-799 to reach full maturity, but the current best guess is that when kept in its filter-feeding phase, an instance will reproduce every 50 to 60 years. Instances of SCP-799 are quite prevalent across the planet, and the SCP Foundation currently has hundreds of examples in containment. Unfortunately, it is unknown just how many still exist in the wild, as it is very difficult to identify instances, with one of the only reliable means being through genetic testing. Should any instances be located, though, they are to be destroyed immediately, as the Foundation already has a large enough population in containment for research purposes, and they pose too much of a risk both in terms of harm and exposure to the general public. SCP-799 has been classified as Euclid, and each instance is kept in its own separate biocontainment cell at Biosite 66. Dust is regularly collected from the on-site D-Class personnel dorms and is sprinkled over the blankets regularly to keep them in their filter-feeding state, though only just enough to hopefully maintain their size and not allow them to reproduce. Should any small cloth objects appear in their containment lockers, it is to be removed immediately and contained separately. SCP-799 isn't the only predatory creature that resembles a cloth good in Foundation containment, and research into possible connections to SCP-1626, the oversized gray hooded sweatshirt that sends penetrating fibers into anyone unlucky enough to put it on, is ongoing.
Dance failed. The young woman laughs as her date tries to catch his breath. The dancing rhythm game was much harder than he anticipated, and he can't help but also laugh at his abysmal score. He takes her hand and the two continue walking through the arcade. It's not crowded at all tonight, and the two have their choice of games as they bounce between the many pinball tables, driving games, and light gun shooters. As they finish up a game of air hockey, her date notices something. It's a door in the back of the arcade that's slightly ajar, the latch and a lock that should be keeping it closed hanging open. "I wonder what's in there," he asks. "Broken games? Maybe ones that let you play without putting in a token? Or keep spitting out tickets even when you lose? Come on." The two slip through the cracked door and find themselves in a dark room that doesn't look like anyone has been inside in a while. There's cobwebs and dust everywhere, but her date was right. It really is filled with broken games. He motions for her to follow as he checks out an old pinball machine. He presses the buttons, but it remains dark. He gives it a hard slap and nothing happens. How disappointing. They really are just busted old machines. The two turn to leave. They might get kicked out if anyone finds them messing around in here. They're back at the door when they both stop and look at each other. Did they hear something behind them? The young woman shrieks with fear at the sight of the old woman staring at her. This time, it's her date's turn to laugh at her. It's just an old fortune teller, nothing to be scared of. They must have accidentally turned it on. She didn't notice it before, but the machine which has the words "Grandmother Predictions" written across the top has come to life, and the inside is now lit up to reveal the animatronic head and torso of an old woman. The old woman isn't moving, but her glassy, dead eyes seem like they are staring right at the young woman. The two look at each other, unsure of what to do, when, without warning, the old woman comes to life. With the clicking and whirring of gears, the old woman appears to breathe in deeply, opening and closing her mouth as she leans slightly forward and back inside her glass container. The young woman steps towards the fortune teller as the old woman inside keeps breathing in and out. But then suddenly, the old woman stops. There's another loud click as a card appears out of a small slot on the front of the machine. She looks down at the card, then looks back up to see that the old woman is staring at her once again, as if the robotic figure can really, truly see her. The young woman slowly reaches towards the card as the old woman's gaze stays locked on her. Her fingers touch the card, and at the exact moment she pulls it free, the fortune teller's lights go out, and the old woman slumps over. "What was that?" her date asks. She didn't even notice that he is standing next to her now. He starts to search around the machine looking for something that may have triggered it, as the young woman looks down at the card she pulled from the slot. Her face changes as she reads it, as she goes from a little freaked out to completely terrified.
"Hey, look at this," her date says as she quickly slips the card into her pocket. Her date reaches behind the back of the machine and pulls out a short piece of cord, one end attached to the fortune teller, the other frayed as if it had been cut. It's not even plugged in. "Let's get out of here," she tells him. She doesn't need to ask him twice, and the two leave the room, emerging back into the lights and sounds of the arcade. Later that night, the two are at the door to the young woman's apartment. He asks if she's sure she's okay. She's not still scared about that broken machine, is she? It's probably just battery operated and they switched it on somehow. The young woman agrees that must be it, and that she's fine, just tired. She gives him a kiss on the cheek and bids him goodnight before going into her apartment and closing the door. Inside, the young woman leans against the door. She takes something out of her pocket and stares at it. It's the fortune that was dispensed from the machine. It reads, "You look like you've made some mistakes. Some things are unforgivable, aren't they?" No way, she thinks to herself. It's just a coincidence. The young woman walks further into her apartment and picks up a framed photo. It's a picture of her several years younger, with another girl who looks just like her. Her sister. She thinks back to that night. The night that she'll never forget no matter how hard she tries. The night she lost her, and lost part of herself too. She sets the picture back down on the table before looking at the fortune she's still holding in her other hand. She crumples the paper in her fist and drops it in the trash before heading to bed. It's late at night, and the young woman is tossing and turning with bad dreams when she suddenly pops up awake. Did she hear a sound? She looks around her dim room, but nothing looks amiss. There it is again, though, a noise. Is it coming from the closet? She gets up out of bed and walks towards the closet, one slow step after another. She reaches towards the closet door, but the moment her fingers touch the knob, the door bursts open. She screams and falls backwards as multiple arms reach out of the darkness in the closet towards her. She screams and kicks at the arms as they grab at her, trying to pull her inside. She fights with all her might as she tries to crawl away from the arms. She manages to escape their grasp and stands up. She runs out of the room and towards the front door as the arms follow, reaching out of the closet, growing longer and longer, the sickening sound of bones twisting and snapping as they form new joints to bend around corners. Her hands reach out for the knob and she grabs it, just as the arms grab onto her. She's jerked backwards and falls to the floor as the arms drag her down the hallway. She tries to resist, her fingernails digging into the floorboards as the arms pull her back into the bedroom. "Hello? You awake?" The woman knocks loudly on the front door. "Come on, we have reservations. You have to get up." The woman knocks again, but still no response. She checks her watch and with a sigh, takes out a set of keys. She finds the one she's looking for and unlocks the door. "Everyone is waiting for us and I'm going to tell them we're late because of..." The woman gasps as she opens the door. She can't believe what she's seeing. The apartment is a mess. It looks like a bomb went off. She looks around, but there's no sign of her daughter. Then she notices the bloody claw marks leading down the hallway towards the bedroom. She runs down the hall, stops in the doorway to the bedroom, and screams. If you've ever been to an arcade, a midway, or a boardwalk, then you may have encountered a fortune-telling machine. These small booths containing an automaton are great fun as you receive a random card that purports to tell you your future or reveal a secret truth about yourself. There's nothing to it, obviously. It's just a random card you're getting after all. But the SCP Foundation has a fortune-telling machine in its possession that's both very real and very dangerous. SCP-517, as it is known to the Foundation, is a 2-meter-tall glass and wooden fortune-telling machine that contains a mechanical animatronic facsimile of an elderly woman wearing a white blouse and a blue shawl. On top of the machine is a panel with the words "Grandmother Predictions" written on it. Once per hour, the machine will power on if an individual enters what could be considered the elderly woman's field of vision. She will turn to directly face the person, seeming to stare right at them, before dispensing a fortune card from a slot on the front of the machine, after which it will appear to shut down and cease to function. It is unknown just how the machine becomes active, seeing as the only cord coming out of the back of the machine appears to have been severed. The fortunes dispensed when the machine comes to life are less a prediction and more of a veiled threat, and examples of ones received have included, "Your mother raised you better than that. I'm sorry, but fair is fair. Some people don't know how to be kind. You'll know soon enough, won't you?" And, "People who do terrible things deserve terrible things. You've brought this upon yourself, my dear." Following an activation of SCP-517, starting at 1:43 a.m. local time, the same events will always occur. The individual that was targeted by the machine will find themselves attacked by a number of entities which have been designated as SCP-517-01. These entities are long, multi-jointed arms that emanate from a location nearby the individual. The exact number that appears will vary, but there usually seems to be between 10 and 36. The arms will appear from a single location that's often a low, cramped, and dark space like a closet, basement, or under a bed. The arms will reach out from this area and try to grab the individual before dragging them back to the location where they manifested. They appear to be able to stretch indefinitely, growing as long as they need in order to continue pursuing the individual, and their many joints allow them to bend around corners or any other obstacles. Should the individual manage to fight the arms off or escape, new arms will materialize nearby the victim to aid in the capture. Once the arms have subdued the targeted person and gotten them back to the area where they appeared, they will begin savagely assaulting them, beating and clawing at them until nothing remains of the victim but a bloody pile of flesh and bones. To date, the Foundation is not aware of any targeted individuals surviving an attack by SCP-517-01 entities. In the event that the fortune-telling machine was activated multiple times on the same day, multiple instances of arms appearing will occur at different locations at the same time, with each group hunting their own individual target. Efforts have been made to figure out exactly where the arms manifest from, and during testing, cameras were set up around the targeted individual in order to try and locate a place of origin. Unfortunately, the arms somehow seemed aware that they were being watched, and the arms always emanated from around a corner or other place that was out of the field of view of the cameras. Tests on SCP-517 did reveal one piece of evidence, though, as fragments of DNA were recovered from the areas where SCP-517-01 instances appeared. DNA that turned out to be human in origin. The origins of the DNA and the identity of the owner have yet to be determined. Research and containment of SCP-517 has proven to be quite difficult, as evidenced by an event designated Incident 517-1997-M. As Foundation Agent Dr. Mail supervised the transport of SCP-517 to a new containment storage locker, the fortune-teller suddenly activated, and it was suspected that Dr. Mail had become a target. Security personnel were alerted, and a defensive strategy was devised to protect her from instances of SCP-517-01 that were expected to manifest that night at 1:43 a.m. Dr. Mail was taken to a helicopter on the roof of a Foundation cafeteria and given the protection of multiple security personnel as they waited for the arms to manifest. Right on cue, the arms appeared in a storage area inside the cafeteria and began stretching their way towards the roof. Security teams inside the cafeteria opened fire on the arms, which took damage just like normal human arms, though they would quickly be replaced by more. More instances of SCP-517-01 began appearing, coming out from under parked vehicles and other storage areas, as the number of arms coming out of the original manifestation site continued to increase, until there were over 100. The arms did not seem to want to fight back against the security teams, though. They seemed singular in their focus, to get to the roof where Dr. Mail was waiting. As the ever-increasing amount of limbs overwhelmed the security teams and breached the roof, the order was given for the helicopter to take off. The helicopter rose into the air, but the arms began manifesting from somewhere underneath the helicopter itself. The arms broke through the windows and pulled Dr. Mail out, passing her down to the waiting arms on the roof that then carried her through the cafeteria's ventilation system. A security personnel in the cafeteria attempted to sever the limbs with a knife and rescue Dr. Mail, but the arms are no longer ignoring their attackers and grabbed him as well, dragging him down towards the storage locker along with the doctor. In the end, 4 members of the security team along with Dr. Mail were pulled into the storage area by the arms. Their remains were collected the next morning, and the Foundation made their best efforts to separate and identify what was left for individual funerary services. SCP-517, which has been classified as safe, is kept in a dedicated containment cell at all times, facing away from the doorway, with an opaque black sheet bound around it. Following the events of Incident 517-1997-M, all testing has been halted, without the express written permission of the site director. Peering into our future can be a fun activity, even when we know it's all just a bit of make-believe. When you pull your fortune from a booth containing an elderly automaton, though, you might just find that this time, Grammie knows your fate for real. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-3998, The Wicker Witch Lives, for another anomaly that's much more than first meets the eye. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single anomaly as we delve further and further into the SCP Foundation's classified archives.